Late Tuesday, June the 23rd, into probably Wednesday, June the 24th for most of you listening to this. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of That's What G Said podcast. We'll have heavy horse racing on this episode. We will talk about Wednesday racing from Gulfstream Park, best bets from Indiana Grand. Then we go through the Canterbury Pick 5. Remember, just 10% takeout on that Pick 5 with Brian Arrigoni, who's the on-track handicapper there. He joins us for the Wednesday Pick 5 and the Thursday Pick 5. On Thursday, we also give best bets for Belmont. We talk about Churchill Downs with Chris Tivnan, who joins us to go through the entire Churchill card. I'm going to talk about some baseball at the beginning and some other news throughout the world of sports. Kick back and enjoy this episode of That's What G Said. So, literally minutes before I came on the air here, we all saw the news, or if you did not see the news, baseball is back. Baseball will be played this year. They have reached an agreement. There will be a 60-game season starting a month from today, July 23rd, July 24th. Let's get through the details. After much back and forth over what feels like forever, the union and the owners, the Players Association and the owners, they were able to come to an agreement. So let's go through some of the news from Jeff Passan, who's been one of the main men covering this for a while. So it's going to be a 60-game season starting July the 23rd or 24th in empty ballparks. The players will be reporting to camp by July the 1st. So in a week, they're going to be back at camp. The final issue was health and safety protocols. They were able to iron any kind of the issues that they had out, and everybody seems to be fine. The issues have been resolved. Players are reporting to training camp. So the regular season schedule will have both divisional and interleague play for teams, which will play only the teams within their geographical division to mitigate travel. So the league also said the majority of teams are expected to conduct preseason training in their home city. So it looks like it'll be, the West versus the West, the East versus the East. You'll play a lot more games against your division, and then interleague probably against those divisions. And it won't be like a full schedule. Obviously, we're only going to have a 60 game schedule, but you won't be, playing the every team the same amount or the way the schedule was going to be set up. There are probably going to be some games against teams that you wouldn't have expected teams to be playing this year. So each team will play 10 games against each of its 4 division rivals, and then 4 games versus each of the 5 clubs in the corresponding division, according to the details obtained by the AP. There it is. Team is scheduled to make only one trip to each city in its visits in MLB's shortest season since 1878. Yankees and Dodgers are open to have the favorites. According to Caesars, Houston Astros are third. So it was Monday when the owners voted to implement the 60-game season, and MLB asked the union if players would be able to report to spring training camp by July 1st. And if the union would agree on health and safety protocols, they were able to get together. And now the league will give as many games as possible through September 27th. That's the cutoff date. And they're hoping that this 60 games instead of 50, could help against a grievance from the players. They will receive their full prorated share of their salaries, about 37% of their full season salaries. Postseason will remain at 10 teams. Players will... Is there anything other specific? Players will not agree to wearing on-field microphones. Teams will not wear advertising patches on their uniforms. Sides expanded the DH to games involving National League teams for the first time, and instituted the radical innovation of starting extra innings with a runner on second base. Playoff teams remain at 10 for now. Still a talk of possible expansion. The rejected deal had called for 16. Trade deadline, August 31st. And the deadline to be in an organization for postseason eligibility is September the 15th. Teams can resume making trades Friday. when rosters will no longer be frozen. Active rosters will be 30 during the first 2 weeks of the season, then they cut down to 28 during the second 2 weeks, then 26. They will not expand to 28 on September 1st as originally intended. With no minor leagues, teams will be allowed to retain 60 players each, including a taxi squad. Up to 3 players from the taxi squad can travel with the team to a game. One of the 3 must be a catcher. So some of these specifics there. Baseball on the way back. And now I know there is a lot of people out there, just from like when I've posted the links on social media, a lot of people are out there saying, I don't care, and players are, wanting more money and this and that. Okay. If you don't know what was going on, the specifics, make sure you're at least kind of pointing your anger at the right group. The players really didn't do anything wrong here. Unfortunately, 2020 is a weird year, right? Not a good year in really any sense of things that have been happening. How many people individually or businesses have lost a ton of money? These players have already taken what was a 30, they're making 37% of what they were supposed to make this year. They've already taken a pay cut. They just are getting prorated pay. It's the owners who were the ones that wanted to continue to cut the season down because they wanted to lose less money when they have, they are the ones with billions in this situation who should be and should have been using this as an investment for their future. Let's get baseball back. If we can get 80 games, great. Anything close to 100 would be awesome as much as we can do. They could have started a few weeks ago. Keep in mind, it's not like we would have been able to start baseball 2 months ago with everything going on. It wouldn't have been, much of a different start date. We're talking about maybe a month. But I know a lot of people feel rubbed the wrong way because it's folks arguing about the difference between millions and billions, but you have to look at it from the players' perspective. They were going to be asked to go out here in the middle of a pandemic and put their lives on the line for a mere fraction of what they were agreed upon, and then they were asked to take another pay cut on top of that. We understand not getting hours. We understand a lot of us, have been furloughed, fired, laid off, and stuff like that. But at most places, it's not necessarily, getting paid less per, and that's what they were actually being asked to get. So I'm glad that, baseball is going to be back. And the real key to all of these things, right, and we're going to talk about this as we transition into the NBA in a minute, is that all of this is being said with the assumption that everything is okay health-wise, that there aren't any massive outbreaks, amongst the teams, amongst the players. There's nobody that if it's maybe one or two, very few here and there, I think it should be okay from everything that I've read. But we're all assuming health. I'm not, when some of the people are saying, they're responding out there when they see that sports are getting back and they're saying it may not work. You're right. I'm reporting and kind of talking about this under the assumption that, hey, they're planning on this coming back. Here's what they're going to do. Here are some of the specifics. And, last week we didn't know if baseball was going to come back, and it wasn't because of the virus. It was because the owners and the players could not come to agreement on terms to get a season started. Now at least we have that. It's 60 games. Is it the 162 that we're used to? No. Is it going to be completely different? Yes. Are we going to always look at the season, and if there's a champ, and if the season finishes, whoever wins the World Series, are we going to maybe put an asterisk next to them and say this was different? Absolutely. Is the same thing going to happen in the NBA? 100%. That's just, everything's going to be that way for 2020. I'm fine with that. We're all going to know that looking back. Let's hope it's only 2020 that happens for. And let's be happy to get some of these sports back. I think in a month, when we have a baseball game on TV, a lot of us are going to be excited to turn on and watch, the Dodgers, Yankees, Braves, Red Sox, Astros, whoever you're a fan of. It'll be fun because not long after, the NBA is planning to start back up. So within a week, we're going to get baseball and then be NBA. We're going to talk about NBA news and a couple other news around the world of sports. But first, let's hear from one of our sponsors. Don't go anywhere. In a world that is very divisive, many people are one extreme or the other right now. It seems like that's just the way to be. We can't really agree on much. I know one thing we can all agree on. Everybody likes it when it's smelling good, and nobody likes it when it stinks. That's why you need to check out Cera Candle Company, C-E-R-A Candle Company at ceracandles.com, C-E-R-A candles.com. Their goal was to create a candle that is 100% natural, clean burning, and of the highest quality that everyone can enjoy. I know the people that are in charge of Cera Candle Company. I've known them my entire life. Here are some of the reasons why they are the best. They have all-natural soy wax. They are free from the toxins found in paraffin wax. So if you're someone who likes to burn candles a lot, these are actually much better for you. They're healthier to have out and in and around the house, and they are much better than the ones used by other leading brands who have that paraffin wax. The all-natural soy wax will hold your scent better, and it will burn up to 50% longer than that paraffin wax candle. 100% lead-free cotton wicks, completely natural scents. They're made in micro batches, hand-poured to ensure the highest quality, and they are locally sourced, handcrafted in the USA. Over 25 different scents available in 3 different sizes. They give you instructions and details how to keep your candle clean, how to ensure the perfect burn, make sure you take care of it, you trim the wick. They have fragrance oils infused with natural essential oils in these candles. Best ingredients, quality packaging, affordable prices, longer burning, none of those carcinogens or those pollutants that are found in other leading candle brands. This was created by people who love candles. They started out experimenting, trying to create the perfect candle, and now they've blossomed into Cera Candle Company. Promo code GINO will get you 10% off of your entire purchase. A great gift for anyone, any kind of a holiday. If you're looking to send a gift to a friend, a loved one, check out a couple of the different scents here from Cera Candle Company. ceracandles.com. Use that promo code GINO. Get you 10% off your purchase. So we'd been hearing that there were growing concerns about the coronavirus cases spiking in Florida. We've seen cases spiking all over the place, and even percentages going up as more people are getting tested. Not just the test numbers, actual percentages going up, which is not a good thing. And so now, of course, there's going to be concern in places like Texas. We've seen Florida, Arizona are some of the few, and especially because Florida is Orlando, where the NBA bubble is supposed to be, and so we've heard that some players have discussed maybe not going, and it looks like Wednesday is going to be the day for the players to kind of try to figure out if they're going to be in or not. And it will give teams an opportunity to try to fill the spot, because that just happened right now, right before we came on the air with Avery Bradley of the Lakers. He has decided that he is not going to be playing. He had talked about how he thinks this is what is necessary for his family, and I can respect him for doing so. He had mentioned, that his son, there were some kind of issues with, respiratory, and he said this is what he thought was best for him and his family. So, let's get to the exact wording from Adrian Wojnarowski. Bradley opting out of Orlando is committed to my Lakers teammates and the organization as I am. I ultimately play basketball for my family. So he said his 6-year-old son has a history of struggling to recover from respiratory illness and would have been unlikely to be medically cleared to enter the bubble with his family. He didn't want to be without his family for a few months. So we may be finding out over the next 24 hours that some players from teams are deciding not to go for whatever reason. If it's injury, if it's, scares of this medically, if it's something to do with their families, we're going to hear about that. I think some people, they talked about it in baseball. If you have a wife or a loved one who is ill or pregnant, or you have very young kids, are you going to be able to leave for, leave for that long? So we'll see if some players on teams that don't feel like they have an opportunity to win a title, maybe they don't come back, and we're going to start to find out more and more. I think over the next 24 hours, it looks like free agent guard J.R. Smith is emerged as a leading candidate to replace Avery Bradley, according to Adrian Wojnarowski. For the Lakers, remember they actually signed Dion Waiters, and we never saw Dion Waiters play, and this would probably mean we're going to see more Caruso with no Avery Bradley. It feels like Caruso would be a perfect fit to start. and be in situations where he doesn't need to handle the ball. That's one of his weaknesses. He's not a good ball handler, but he's an excellent defender, and he's just a smart basketball player. He does a great job playing when he's on the court with LeBron. They have incredible plus-minus together and chemistry. And so I think Caruso would be a great fit there. Then what you do is you end up getting what you need from Rondo is for him to help run the offense when LeBron's not in the game. So those few minutes a game where LeBron's, out and you need someone on the court to handle the ball a little bit, that's where you'll have probably Rondo, in minute, hopefully just little 5-minute spurts there. And, so within the 23rd, 24th, baseball's back, and then the NBA is going to be back on July 30th. Again, all of this is hoping and assuming health-wise, safety protocols, all that is on the up and up. And we could be seeing, MLB and NBA within a week of each other coming back. And, within the next 6 weeks, two of the big major sports will be back in these real condensed, interesting seasons. The NBA, remember, they're only going to finish the last 8 games of what would have been a season, and not even finishing a season, but they're going to play 8 games and then go into a playoff. Baseball is going to just take a shot playing a shortened 60-game season and then get into their playoff. Tiz The Law wins the Belmont. We'll have a lot more horse racing to talk about later, but I just wanted to mention, shout out to Tiz The Law, who has been just a really, really nice animal from the get-go. He has one blemish on his record. He had a little bit of trouble when he finished 3rd in the Kentucky Jockey Club, and he's won his other 5 races, and now he wins the Belmont. It looks like he's going to be headed to the Travers and then the Kentucky Derby after. Remember, the schedule is all backwards. He's a horse who has taken a lot of money, in most of his starts now, especially his last few, because we've known how good he is after his couple. So from a betting standpoint, he's not one that I generally bet. I'm usually either kind of staying away or playing against him. This time we were playing against him on the win end, and he was just excellent. Looked really good. He was better than that group, and he handled them the way a better horse should. So congratulations to the connections there, winning the Belmont, and it looks like they're going to be on to the Travers for the next spot for Tiz The Law. We are currently in the Elite 8 of That's What G Said podcast, Best Football Movies. Get on over to Twitter, follow me, it's me, Gino B, and vote in the polls. It's Remember the Titans versus Friday Night Lights, Varsity Blues versus Necessary Roughness, Brian Song versus Jerry Maguire, and The Waterboy versus Rudy. We'll let you know as we get to the final 4, and we'll break those down a little more on the next episode later on this week. In what's really sad news, I'm not going to talk a whole lot about it yet because it's all still such a fluid situation, but I'm a huge wrestling fan. We talk about WWE and All Elite Wrestling and different wrestling here, recapping shows, talking about old wrestling shows all the time. And this week, what is very similar to what we saw in the Me Too movement, which was about a year or two ago, there's been a similar movement coming out in wrestling all over, and there have been many people speaking out, male, female, people all over who have been harmed, who have been harassed, who have been assaulted, who have been sexually abused by some of these cases, very famous wrestlers that many of us didn't know about. In some cases, people knew rumors or heard things, but it's been very unfortunate and a really rough week, I think, for a lot of people who either, in particular, the people who went through all of this and had to relive these memories and had to kind of drag all this stuff up again, whether to be to talk about it or to kind of help to draw awareness for some people out there. So in what's been just a very, very sad year where there have been a lot of bad things happening in the world, we were able to see that some of the people that we thought and we may have looked up to are not quite the people we thought they were. So when we find more out about that, I'll talk a little bit more about it. I just wanted to address it as being someone that pays attention to wrestling. I've been seeing a lot of this stuff, and it's horrifying. There's not a whole lot positive to say about it. I just hope that with all this stuff coming to light, some people will be saved and helped. And we've seen major wrestlers from different organizations be fired, released already, and there have been a lot of names named, people from the past, people currently, and hopefully this is the start of kind of cleaning up that world in the way that the wrestling business is. And if it does, then hopefully at least some positive came from this. With these major sports coming back, right now is the time to head to thrivefantasy.com or go to your app store and download the Thrive Fantasy app. It's a daily fantasy app. I'm sure some of you out there who love to play fantasy sports or bet on sports, you've played on these different daily fantasy apps. This one is a little different in that what they do is it's all about over-under. So if you're someone who bets on props, this will be something that is right up your alley. You select and build your lineup around a list of prop bets. And on each bet, they're assigned a point total, and you pick over or under the point total. And you select your lineup. You have a couple in case of emergency selections all the way down. They have contests right now that are going on for golf, for League of Legends, and then once baseball and basketball start back up, you're going to have those. They have contests where you can play in head-to-heads. You can create group contests. They also have, major contests where you can get involved for $20, $25 and be playing for hundreds or thousands of dollars in prizes. I've gotten involved in plenty of these. Anytime I have a new site, I always want to play. I want to make sure that if I win, I can be able to withdraw my money and everything is on the up and up. They do a great job there. And they're offering you a little bonus for the That's What G Said listeners. So if you're someone who, you're listening, you're a little bit interested, go check it out. You don't have to spend hundreds or thousands of dollars. You can get involved for like $20 in a lot of these contests. You can play in contests sometimes that are $2, $5. They have free roll contests. They're just like they sound. They're free, and you win money right back if you win the contest. So check out Thrive Fantasy. Go right now, download, deposit $10. You get an instant $10 credit right back. So if you put 10 in, you'll have $20 in there. You can mess around. You can check it out. If you have any questions, let me know. ThriveFantasy.com, promo code GINO. That'll get you $10 back on your first $10 bonus. Good luck there with Thrive Fantasy. Let's get into Wednesday horse racing. We're going to do best bets from Gulfstream, best bets from Indiana Grand, and then we'll get to the interview with Brian Arrigoni where we go through the Canterbury Pick 5. So we'll kind of go in order of post times and the way these races are going to flow. Gulfstream first. Before we get into the racing, though, you're listening to this racing part, so you're a racing fan. Go follow Stable Duel on Twitter or check out StableDuel.com. Download the Stable Duel app from your stores. They're going to be back up and running with the daily fantasy games. Remember that? We've had a couple times where we played in different Stable Duel contests. Well, they're on the way back. As soon as we have more information, we'll give it to you. But go follow right now on social media so that way you'll be ready to go as soon as they're in. We're going to talk about all those contests. We're going to break down lineups. We're going to give you all the information here on That's What G Said, but you want to be ahead of the game. So go give a look to Stable Duel. Gulfstream Park. Past performance is out Wednesday, June the 24th. Let's get to race number 1 for our first play. And I'm going to go to the 10. I do think the 6, 9, and 10 all very logical horses in here, right? The 9 probably has a pace advantage. The 6 should get a really nice trip. But I think with a horse like Cold Warrior drawn to the inside, will maybe be forced a little bit and try to show more speed. I think Swinging on a Star has a little more speed than what it really looks like on paper. And, the next best thing isn't going to be far out of it. And then the 11, Took a Cab, also has a little bit of speed. I think there's going to be enough pace, throw the 12 in there, you're out of control, to set up for Wordman, who's going to have to come from off of it a little bit. He tried a mile last time out. He broke well, but so did a couple others, so he ended up taking back a little bit. Instead of being close up, he's back to 6th. He's too deep. He ends up like 5 lengths off. The top 2 the finishers that day, they were 2nd and 3rd throughout, so there wasn't a whole lot of movement and passing going on. Now you get the drop in class to the 12.5 level. You get the cutback in distance. Both of the sprints on the turf were pretty good, and with just a little pace, this guy will come running. You'll get a little bit better value because he didn't run that great last time going long. Wordman, with that race under his belt, he had a couple months off. Expect him to be better today. If we can get around 7-2, we'll make a win wager on the number 10, Wordman, in race 1 at Gulfstream. Let's get you to race number 5 for our second play. It's going to be the number 8, Awesome Ella, who's going to get back to the grass. And this is a Florida bred who was facing open company in Southern California for the first few starts of her career, and she's really done little wrong. When sprinting, she broke, a little bit slowly, and she came running late. She finished fourth in a big field, and she was then the runner-up in a maiden special weight going long on the grass. Then she was actually favorite, and she didn't have the best of trips. She wasn't beaten a whole lot. It was only beaten 3 lengths in December at Del Mar. And then she comes back. She hadn't raced from December to May the 28th. She has a slow start in a small field in a race that's taken off the grass. She ends up having to be fifth. She's only a few lengths off, but she's 3 deep at the back of the pack. She's chasing a horse who ends up winning, going really slow on the front end. It was just a race that was against her, and she ran really well to finish second. She's been good against open company. This is a race against Florida breds. She's run well going long on the turf. She's never really run a bad race. I think this is a great spot for Awesome Ella. The Chad Brown first-time starter, they're always going to take some money in here. And Izu will also take a little bit of money, who wasn't too far behind Awesome Ella. But I give the lean to the 8, who I think could be a single if you want to play some early pick 5s or any kind of the early exotics. That's the number 8, Awesome Ella. If anything over 2-1 feels like value on Ella. Let's go to race number 7 for our final play on the Wednesday Gulfstream card. Race number 7, for me, it's all about the number 5, Colonist, who's going to take a big drop in class from $100,000 optional claimer in for these 35 beaten claimers. I remember this horse from Southern California, and he had some ability. I think he still has a little bit of that ability, too. Just his last few races, he comes off of a long layoff. He hadn't raced from November of 2018 to April of 2020. He comes back in a tough spot at Gulfstream Park. He's in a new barn. He hooks a horse named Halliday, who just gets to cruise that day. It's a race that has already produced a couple next out winners, 3 next out winners. The first and second place finisher both came back out of that race to win, and the 9th place finisher won an optional 62 non-2 out of that field. So it was a really loaded race, not an easy spot to return for your first race in a year and a half. Then the next race on May the 24th tries to get on the grass. It's taken off the turf. You keep in there in the slop. Just put a line right through it, right? You're beating 20 lengths. Now you get a big drop in class. You take the blinkers off. It's third start off the long layoff. I can make excuses for those first 2. If there's anything left in here, he's going to show it, and he could win this race easily. And so if he's around 3 to, if he's anything over 5-2, that seems very, very fair. And maybe he's just not the same horse, and he doesn't show it here. But if the key is the value for him. If he's 5-2 or so and over, play him. He gets back to turf. He's multiple graded stakes placed on the turf. Coming off that 18-month break, he hooked that tough field, and he's now going to go third off the long layoff. He's ready for any improvement on the big drop, and he wins this. Colonist. Make sure to use him in all of your exotics. And like I said, if we get 5-2, let's make a win wager on him. Those are your 3 plays for Wednesday, June the 24th at Gulfstream Park. Let's get you over to Indy. 3 plays for Indy, Indiana Grand, Wednesday, June the 24th. Get your past performances out. We'll go to race number 1 for our first play. That's the number 2, Portal Creek. Now, let's look at her last few starts, right? She is well defeated. 2 back, she's 5th. 3 back, she's 3rd. Prior to that, she's beating 25 claimers. Let's go to right around there. And even back, let's go to Del Mar. She's in and competitive with 32 claimers. So you can make an excuse for her on February the 6th, coming off the bench a little bit. That was a race that was not a fast track. Put a line right through it. Comes back on February the 27th. Beats a group of 25 claimers at Oaklawn. Then steps up in a first-level allowance race and runs really, really well. If we got a repeat of the $25,000 claiming race, win in the Sadler barn, or the first start for the new barn, that first-level allowance on March the 21st, either of those wins this race. Puts Portal Creek right there at a big price. I think she can sit the trip in here, cutting back a little bit. What I like is her tactical style. So on April the 4th, she got caught in between horses. She was in tight. And there were a couple next out winners. That was in a slop that day. Excuses on that one. And last time out, she has a slow start, but she's only a couple lengths off of it early. She's chasing really fast fractions. They went sub 22 to the quarter. And she was a little bit wide. She's in between. That's a tougher group. Now you get a cutback. You get a drop in class. I think Portal Creek is going to sit a really nice trip in here. If we get anything around 5-1, that's fair value on here. She's too high on the morning line. 5-1 seems like the value line on the number 2, Portal Creek, in race number 1 at Indiana Grand on Wednesday. Let's get to race number 6. We have 3 plays at Indiana Grand for Wednesday. Race number 6, it's going to be the 5, Naughty Alfred. Okay, let's go through his career now. He has raced 8 times. Career debut, he wins at Churchill for 30. And then he's claimed for 30, and he stepped up, and he faces a lot tougher, right? He's facing first level allowance company at Churchill a couple of different times. He has trouble in one of them. And then he has to face, another first level allowance group over at Oaklawn Park, or a tough group there. A horse like Marvin was second next out that you see in there has been like a perennial contender in deep allowance races. So that gives you an idea. You see, a bunch of next out winners like Strike That, New Colossus that have all come back well. So Naughty Alfred just coming out of deep, better races. 2 times in his career, he was claimed for 30 and then stepped up and took a shot against much tougher. It happened right after his maiden breaking score, claimed, try tougher. Then they drop back in, claimed for 30, and a newborn does the same thing. They take a couple shots with him against tougher. Doesn't run poorly on March the 5th at Oaklawn in a race that had a couple next out winners. I mentioned New Colossus, who came out of that to win 2 out of 3. The 8th place finisher won next out at Lone Star, won a 15 non-winners of 3 lifetime. Tossed the races in the slop. You have even more excuses for him. You get the drop. He has speed. He can sit. He showed February the 16th. That's the kind of race. He can sit off the pace a little bit, but he has enough speed to put him in the mix. And what ends up happening in some of these races, I think because you're not quite as fast as a few others, that might be a blessing in disguise. You have a horse like Soul Song in here who's really, really quick. Bump Bailey is pretty quick too. A Song for You is not exactly slow. I think Naughty Alfred could end up working out a trip right behind them. That's the number 5, Naughty Alfred. Anything around 7-2, we're going to make a win wager in race number 6 at Indiana Grand. Let's go to race number 8 at Indy for our final play of the Wednesday at Indy. It's going to be the number 1, Amazima. Okay, let's go back for the last couple starts. December the 20th. She's facing first level allowance company at Fairgrounds. So we're going to her last 3 starts. She has a fine start. She settles in about 6th, 7th, but she wasn't that far out of it. She's no more than 4 or 5 out. She's in between. She's 2 deep of 3. Then she's 3 deep of 4. She's waiting for room, but she was trapped behind horses. By the time she got an opening, it was much too late. She did not run poorly that day at all. She comes back on January the 17th. In a race that had produced 2 next out winners. And one of the horses who actually finished second came back and finished second, but was put up to first after the horse who finished first, I think, was DQ'd because of a positive test. So on January the 17th, she settles in 4th or 5th. She's on the inside. She's 3 off. She's in the 3rd flight. She moves nicely in between horses. She angles 4 deep down the stretch to get up for a good, determined win. And then on February the 22nd, she had a fine start, but she gets hooked 4 wide and in between horses. She settles 4th. She's about 3 deep. The top of the lane, she moves up. She's within 2. She angles out, but I think the wide trip ended up catching up with her. The horse who was second that day has won 3 of 4, is a very sharp one. I think at even half of her morning line, she would be a good price. So anything around 5-1 seems fair. That's the number 1 in race number 8 at Indiana Grand. So in the first, number 2, Portal Creek, in the 6th race, the number 5, Naughty Alfred, and in the 8th, the number 1, Amazima. We'll go to Canterbury now, and we're going to bring on Brian Arrigoni. We talk with Brian about the Canterbury Wednesday late pick 5, and then a little later on in the show, we're going to talk about the Canterbury Thursday pick 5. Remember, if you're listening and if you've never played Canterbury, the reason why I'm talking about it a lot more, and we're going to be playing it on this show a bunch, it's a 10% takeout wager. As customers, as bettors, that means we are getting more of our money back. We've kind of demanded this as horse players and bettors for the tracks to lower the takeout, and so when a small track like this does, we really have to take notice. That's something that I love about Sam Houston with their low takeout in all the wagers. And so with a 10% pick 5, let's get on over and talk to Brian Arrigoni about the 10% pick 5 for Wednesday's Canterbury late pick 5 sequence. Well, as horse players, we all kind of gripe that one of the things that we want is we want lower takeout in horse racing. And you know what? One of those racetracks has been listening to us. They have put together a 10% takeout pick 5 each and every racing card. I'm talking about Canterbury Park over in Minnesota, a track that I had the privilege of looking at quite a bit some years back when I was at TVG. And I just love the fact that they did this. They tried something similar a few years ago, kind of lowering overall takeout. But I think right now is a perfect time to take another shot at doing something like this. So when we talk Canterbury, there is nobody better to talk about Canterbury than the man who is the on-track handicapper over at Canterbury. That is Brian Arrigoni, who's going to join us today. We're going to talk a little bit overall, and then we're going to break down the Wednesday and the Thursday pick 5s for June the 24th and June the 25th. Brian, thank you for joining us here on That's What G Said.
Yeah, thanks for having me on. I think you laid it out beautifully with horse players demanding and wanting that low takeout, and that's exactly what we've done with that 10% takeout. And so far, it's given back to the bettors in a big way.
Yeah, and it's fun. One thing I like about Canterbury, too, we're talking about a racetrack that isn't one of the big, huge racetracks, but as far as when we're talking about a smaller track, what I love, you get big barns, and you're not necessarily one of those tracks that only has the dirt racing. I think when you mix that turf racing element in, you can really get big prices and big payouts throughout, and that's one thing that we've seen. I love Canterbury because as far as I've been playing and watching, they've been a track that has seemed to be very, hey, you know what? We're going to try some things over here. Maybe it's not one thing we're going to try or two things we're going to try and it doesn't work this year, and then we'll tweak it and we'll go the other year. But as far as, races with mixed breeds, the 2 races on the one track, the lower takeout, they seem like a racetrack. Even with Paul Allen calling the races, the atmosphere on the night racing when you have the crowds there, it seems like a racetrack that kind of gets it and really wants to try to make the fan experience a good one.
Certainly, and this year is unique for us because we rely so much on our attendance. And, with the pandemic, things have changed, so I really appreciate that 10% low takeout. You kind of touched on it in the opener that we tried it a few years ago with the low takeout across the board. And unfortunately, that year, it was just unique that we had such bad weather. It affected a lot of the field sizes, which essentially affected the value. Mm-hmm. And it would have been nice to try that for a little bit longer, but coming back to it now, we eliminated the jackpot pick 5. We did add in a 20-cent jackpot pick 6, but the 10% takeout pick 5 has really been the play all meat. And you touched on it with the turf racing. Oftentimes we get some very big fields for our turf races. We're not sending 5 or 6 to the gate on the turf very often, and that's why there's so much value on our turf course.
So, Ryan, let's before we get into the races for Wednesday and Thursday, let's talk a little bit about you. It feels like you just started over there, but what is it? This is already going to be like your fifth or sixth season, I think, doing this at least. So how do you get into, in general, how do you become a racing fan? And then how did you get over at Canterbury doing what you're doing?
So I was fortunate enough, like many of us, to get into it by my father. My dad got me into it. He was at Canterbury on opening day back when it was Canterbury Downs before it was Canterbury Park. So he brought me out there ever since I was little in a stroller. I think bought me my first racing form when I was 12. So it's a family thing for us. No trainers or anything like that. No horse people in my family at all. But my dad simply was a bettor, raised me as a bettor, and I'm a gambler through and through. And now I'm fortunate enough to take that gambling aspect and bring it to the paddock analysis, which has been fun.
And we're, in all transparency, we're actually recording this even Tuesday morning before the Tuesday races go out. So I really appreciate the work that you put in a little early for me, because sometimes it's not easy talking about a couple cards in advance before the one's even gone. But we like to do that here. We can give people a little bit extra time to try to get the chance to download and listen for over the next couple of days, because this conversation will probably be out like Tuesday evening. So a big week of racing coming up at Canterbury, because this is going to be a week where you actually start next week, Brian, with an extra day of racing.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. Monday through Thursday, live racing every day at 4:30. Certainly going to be a grind for many people like myself that have a primary job or a main source of income as well. But when you do handicap ahead, it makes things a lot easier. But we're really excited to have Monday through Thursday. Our handle's been great. We've been approaching 2 million in handle every single day, which has been awesome. And, we talk a lot about the 10% pick 5 takeout, which has had usually around 100,000 in handle, but our middle to late pick 4 has been excellent as well. There's been plenty of value there, averaging over 75,000 in that middle pick 4 as well. So the bettors have followed us to Monday through Thursday, and hopefully with this takeout, we can give back to them as well.
Well, let's get right on into it. If those of you who are going to be following along, playing with us, get your past performances out. We're going to be looking at Wednesday, June the 24th at Canterbury, and we're going to flip to race number 4, which is a start of that 10% low takeout pick 5. And then right off the bat, one of those grass races that we talk about. We have a field of 8 in here, but you look at this race and you have a horse who is going to take a good amount of money, Always Cool, who has not raced since June of 2019 and doesn't really have a whole lot of speed. Might be the kind of horse who you can take a shot against, or at least use with a couple others. But he's come out of some good races. I think, different directions to go in here. A live firster barn from the inside. You have Semi-Charmed Day, who had a good race against Maiden Claimers at Fairgrounds. Where do you start in race number 4?
This is a tough race. You have to decide right off the bat, if you're going to use the Lothenbach horses or if you're going to play against them. And Always Cool, you've got a $400,000 horse who, off a year-long layoff, a lengthy layoff, comes back to Canterbury. And then you've got the first year in Malibu Jack, $275,000 by Malibu Moon, who had been training at Churchill Downs. I can't imagine their plan was to get their training in at Churchill that has plenty of long maiden races on the turf, and then to ship to Canterbury. So I'm going to try and take a stand actually against both those horses. I'm going to play Obi Ridge in the 2, and then JP Warrior for Beeler and Lori Beeler. I think these horses have experience over the turf course, come in a little bit more fit, should be ready to go. Tony Ringsdorf does an awesome job off of long layoffs. This one had a prep race on the dirt. I think you can toss that race on the dirt. Gets back on the turf where Winchester plays thoroughbreds. They strictly breed for turf horses, and Jareth Loveberry navigates our turf course like an old pro. So I'm going to try and start with potentially a price in Obi Ridge and JP Warrior on top, and take a little bit of a stand against horses like Always Cool and Malibu Jack.
Yeah, I think we see this first leg of the sequence pretty similar, because the barn on the inside, we talk about Burn and how they're really good overall, but not with first time starters going sort of longer. Actually, 0 for 8 with first time starters going over 7 furlongs. It's just kind of tricky to get a horse ready to fire this long. So I think, if we're looking at who might be the best horses down the line, we might be looking at the 1 and the 5. But as far as who are going to be the best horses to play in this race, I'm right with you. I think Obi Ridge is a horse you have to use. I really like Semi-Charmed Day in here too. I think that February race at Fairgrounds will translate very well to this group. There were actually a couple next out winners that day, including a maiden special weight winner at Louisiana Downs. So we also had a couple next out winners last time out that went from that Oak Lawn race that went on to win against that maiden claiming level. So I just think Semi-Charmed Day is coming out of some productive races. And you mentioned JP Warrior, a good one too, who that lone turf effort last year at Canterbury was not bad at all. The race has come back live. So for me, I kind of have 2, 7, and then 4. And then the big question mark is, what do we do with the horse like the 5, Always Cool? But totally fine with taking swings against short-priced horses, especially when you're playing these sequences every day, right? You can't just – they're the horses that you're going to be scared of sometimes, that you just have to take a stand against. It's going to be better for you down the line.
Yeah, absolutely. And you touched on it with Semi-Charmed Day, in the 7, 3-1 morning line. We'll see if that goes up or down. It is a horse going from the claiming ranks to maiden special weight. But for those, and many of them are new to Canterbury, a trainer like Mac Robertson, he's in our Hall of Fame. Locally, he gets pounded at the windows. There's oftentimes not the value that's there but the guy simply wins races. And then talking about Joel Burnt and Denny Velasquez or Ryakaberry, a lot of people say don't handicap jockey trainer combinations and things like that, but I can tell you with confidence that Denny typically gets first call for Joel Burnt. Now, the numbers are a little bit misleading this year because Denny didn't ride at Canterbury last year, but he does get first call with Joel Burnt, and I think always cool. We'll outdo the first-time starter down on the rail.
We move to race number 5 here, which is going to be 6.5 furlongs. We have the one of those like hybrid claiming conditions where it's 3-year-olds and up which have not won a race in 2020 or which have never won 4 races. I think another race, I mean, what's great is just, vulnerable favorites beating favorites. I don't think, you look at a field like this, Fayette Warrior is coming out of a lot better. He has won at 6.5 on the grass. And he did have maybe a legitimate excuse last time out. He faced a horse who was dropping out of first level allowance and basically just won gate to wire in Unleash the Beast. So I think this is a much better spot for him, but there are a couple others they could use. I take a strong look to the 4 Handsome John. I think the 8's a little bit interesting. Where do you start in race number 5?
It's tough. I think the race goes through Fayette Warrior. I had heard that a lot of these Danny Caldwell, Villafranco horses pretty much entered, right off the trailer. They got here and they went right to the racetrack. I think many of them this week so far with what I've seen are taking a drop in class, should improve second start over the track. And I expect that from Fayette Warrior, who I think could be tough in here. Maybe on one of my tickets, I take a stand in here and try and single. Other than that, I think you got to look at both the 8 and the 5, Blue Jeans and Beer, a horse who loves Canterbury Park. 6.5 furlongs should fit this horse perfectly. Has a tracking style that's versatile, 4 wins over the track. And then Cyclone Dan, a lot of the same reasons for Fayette Warrior, second time over the track. I expect this one to improve in a big way.
That's a good point on the Caldwell horses too. So maybe something to expect is they're kind of like figuring out where they fit on this circuit. It's like some of them maybe took a shot against a little too tough, or maybe a race they needed, and they're kind of figuring out because, we see that's going to be one thing that's a little different this year too, is that what's been going on the last couple months with so many of these racetracks that have been closed down, the levels of the races at places like Fauner, Will Rogers, and Oaklawn. I mean, we had some really deep, really tough races, so we're all going to kind of be sort of guinea pigs when we're working out how these horses come out of those races, where they fit on a new circuit like Canterbury here, because you see horses that are coming out of some races here, even some of these like low-level claimers, and those races were way deeper than they normally were because there were no other tracks running.
Absolutely. And it's bigger than just horse racing and gambling in general, but you talk about the pandemic, unemployment, things like that. Some of these owners are challenging other people to take a stand and claim horses.
Great point.
There's a reluctancy to claim horses and add to your barn right now. So if they can drop in class, get a purse, and keep their horse, what a win.
Yeah, you meant so Fayette Warrior, kind of the horse you have to start with in the 5th. Handsome John is the other one. I think if you toss the turf, I would give a big long look to. And then you also mentioned Blue Jeans and Beer. Wouldn't be shocked if this one breaks a lot better and is right on the lead or sitting very close from the outside. I think the race will kind of go through Fayette Warrior there in that 5th. Race number 6, we go back to the grass here, 7.5 furlongs on the turf. We have 3-year-olds and up which have not won a race in 2020 or which have never won 4. And just from a price standpoint, this race kind of feels like there might be 3, maybe even 4 horses that could kind of battle and all be similar prices. I thought the 6-10 Speed, you're going to see a lot more of these Carl Broberg in-zone athletic horses that come in. They're always live. I'm an 8. Has some really nice turf form to call back on. What's wrong with the 1, a horse like Broken Key, who's also coming at it better. So I think, you start with a couple of them. Buy Me a Bond towards the outside. It's been in some really, really tough races. Another one that, just like you said, with these grass races, you have a field of 10 here and many ways to go.
Yeah, this is a cool race. I mean, this is what makes our game so great. You've got some very salty claimers in here and some horses that have been going at it for a long time down on the rail. You've got the 10-year-old in Broken Key, and then on the outside, Born Force, the 11-year-old making career start number 79, and Buy Me a Bond, who's a horse that I'm all too familiar with, always seems to run into a troubled trip, needed that horse many a times, and settled for less a lot. This is the hardest race in the sequence, I think.
Yeah, I think so too. Yep.
it's a race that you either spread super deep or take a stand. On one of my tickets, I'm going to go as deep as I possibly can. On the other ticket, I'm going to single Broken Key. The 10-year-old, doesn't love to win races. In fact, only won one race last year. But back in his heyday, this horse was a complete monster. And on his best day, he certainly can beat this bunch. The thing I like and the thing that stands out to me is this is one of Gary Shearer's favorite horse. I think of those 50 starts, more than 30 of them or 35 of them have been under Gary Shearer. Claims the 10-year-old back. You don't see many 10-year-olds get claimed. But then, when he owns and trains, you don't have to worry about those training fees or anything like that. So gives the horse a layoff, comes back fit. The 3 workouts that are shown are slow, but I can trust that he's got the 10-year-old on his A game in a reasonable spot and also not eligible to be claimed in here. So Broken Key, going to be a single on one of my tickets.
I'm going to do the same thing on one, too. I think it's a great spot for Broken Key to save all the ground from the inside and come rolling in here, too. And you look at the way this race is going to shape up, I think, on paper for a horse who's going to be able to sit and make one late run. You have a horse like Outrun the Posse stretching out who's going to be close. You have Power Cry who's going to show some speed. You have 10 Speed who's going to show some speed. I'm an 8 is not exactly slow. They have the option to be right on the front end if they have to. I think it's going to set up very well for Broken Key to just save all the ground and come running. I think I'm going to do almost exactly what you said. One ticket, I'll be singling. One ticket, I'll spread out. The one price horse I will use on a couple tickets is the 2, Scattered Cash, who, just getting back to a jockey trainer combo where they have had a ton of success. This is a horse who last time we saw at Canterbury was rattling off a couple wins on the grass against open $7,500 claimers. So not a consistent horse necessarily, but a feast or famine one that at a price might be good to use in at least maybe 1 or 2 of your backup pick 5 tickets, however you're approaching it. But it looks like Broken Key is going to be that real maybe key horse for you and I in this sequence. We'll both try to play at least one ticket where we can single in on the one in race number 6. And we get to race number 7. Here we have 10,000 claimers, fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, never won 2 races, or Minnesota breds, which have never won 3. They're going to be traveling a mile on the main track here. So where do you start? Who are some of your top tier horses in this one?
I mean, I think the 4 and the 5 are going to take a lot of money in here. I'm going to actually try and beat both of them. I have my question marks with Slingshot Mistress and Hush Y'all, another horse who's 1 for 17, 2-1. In my opinion, doesn't provide much value for Kelsey Harr and Robert Klein. I'm going to try the inside runners in Lila's Lucky Lady and Summer Lovin'. Knowing that we raced today on Tuesday, Lila's Lucky Lady was double entered. They choose this spot. All the wins have come shorter, but they ultimately think that she's a 2-turn horse. She should love the stretch out. Has been running consistently at Will Rogers Downs, who had a tougher meet this year. Lila's Lucky Lady going to be a play for me with Arietta. And then a horse like Summer Lovin' always seems to find trouble. Every single start up and down the running line going back to last year always finds trouble. Had a sneaky amount of it last time, but it's a subtle drop in class, and not many people are going to catch this one, but actually took on the boys last time out. Gets back in with the fillies in here. Had a decent run after some traffic trouble early, and if they can avoid trouble, I think Summer Lovin' could be an overlay at that price.
Yeah, I think you mentioned, all the real horses to think about including, or depending on how you're approaching your ticket to include. I think maybe the only one that I maybe will use on a ticket where I single in the 6th, I could throw in a horse like the 7 Scylla, who has a little bit of speed and maybe could just kind of fall into a good spot. I think the horse to beat is the one, Lila's Lucky Lady. I really do. You just get back to Canterbury. This is a really good spot. You're going to go 3rd off the long layoff. You get the inside draw. I'm looking at that race back in July that just kind of stands out to me. And I'm thinking a similar type race where you can just sit a couple lengths from the inside, stretching back out from 5.5 to a mile. I just don't think she's going to be far out of it throughout. You're going to have a really good pilot all the way through. So to me, I think the 2 horses that I'll probably play different tickets where I single will probably be in these back-to-back races where with the 1 Broken Key in race number 6 and then the 1 Lila's Lucky Lady. I think these are 2 of my favorite horses in the sequence that I'll probably try to build different tickets around. I think you hit on the other horses in here to use. Definitely Summer Lovin', who's just been super unlucky. Hush Y'all makes a lot of sense. Gonna come closing, but with that running style, maybe this is a race where you just want a little bit more from a value standpoint. The 4 obviously makes some sense a little bit too, but for me, I'll kind of maybe take a stand here with the 1 Lila's Lucky Lady and maybe play another spread ticket. As we get to the closeout leg, we get to race number 8. We're going to go 1.16 on the turf course in here. And if we're 4 for 4 and going into this 8th race, how deep do you think you need to be to close this out?
Well, I mean, you and I seem to be pretty spot on with handicap.
Yeah, we do.
We like a lot of the same horses, so I gotta reverse this one on you and ask you how you're gonna play this last one first, so I don't take all your bits.
I'm gonna go. I'll probably have my 4, 6, 7, 8 are the horses that I have, and I'll use those combinations in a couple different spots. I do think the 4 Golden Scepter, adding the blinks, getting back to the turf. I think you can put a line through that last race when it was on the grass, just completely cross it out. I mean, last time we saw this guy on the grass, he was breaking his maiden at Turf Paradise. I think he's a price horse to include. I definitely respect the 8 who's coming in from Gulfstream Park for a very, very good barn. So I think you probably want to include him in some of your tickets. And then I think the 6 and the 7 would probably be the other 2 in a race that's damn wide open. I'm not even leaving. I'm not even talking about the 5 Chatterman, who I wouldn't really talk you off. But the 6 Irish Major comes off of that race at Tampa, and I love when some of these horses can get that first prep out of the way, kind of under their belt. They may have a little bit of a fitness advantage late on some of the horses who haven't raced since maybe early 2020 or even late 2019. So Irish Major is one of the must-use horses. I know he doesn't win a whole ton, but he seems like this is a good fit, a really good spot for him in here. So for me, 4, 6, 7, 8 would be the horses. I mean, I would definitely make sure to let people know to include the 6 on some tickets, Irish Major.
Yeah, I mean, this is a tough race and a race that would be fun to be live going into it and be deep. Fairness and wagering, I used to own Mesa Skyline, so the first time I ever owned a horse, it was Mesa Skyline comes back in this race. The new connections have done an awesome job with him. He's a cool horse, as friendly as they come. They made $30,000. At the end of it, it looked like something would have missed, but they gave the horse a layoff. Leandro Gonzalez and Valerie Lund team up in here. I think Mesa Skyline, if right, can be ready to run. I see the same thing with Irish Major. This horse is never going to go off at 6-1, second off the layoff, coming in from Tampa. Now, how did you see the pace playing out? Because I thought long and hard about Skippy's Strike on top, potentially lone speed, but Pine Grove Road kind of affected that lone speed.
That's the reason why I like Golden Scepter a little bit. I think might be able to sit the trip maybe right behind them, or have at least enough speed to kind of be in the mix with them. That's kind of where I was leaning against Pine Grove Road for that reason. I mean, I'm not talking anybody off of using a horse who's going to be in the mix and would figure, but I kind of see the 2 and the 3 maybe hooking up a little bit, and hopefully the 4 can maybe just work out a trip right behind the 2 of them. I think the 6 Irish Major, like a repeat of that effort with that kind of a style, should end up putting him in a perfect spot. That's just the concern with the 8 is just the maybe having to come from too far out of it. But I'm with you. Pine Grove Road, I wouldn't talk anybody off of, and in particular, Skippy Strike. That's the one that you mentioned that might even be able to kind of sneak away. Maybe the 3 and the 4 end up sitting a little bit, and if Skippy sneaks away, that would be a nice horse to be closing with.
Absolutely. At 10-1, you've got the Hall of Fame rider. I don't know how the horse will react to blinkers off, but if they've had the blinkers off in the morning, those workouts are consistent, they're fast, and you get a Hall of Fame rider who could be loose on the lead if Pine Grove Road opts to sit off of it.
Okay, so a couple of overall final thoughts on Wednesday. In leg 1 for me, I kind of have the 2 and the 7 as my top tier horses and my must use horses in the pick 5 sequence. And when I go to the second leg of the sequence for me, I think it was 4-8 as my must use horses: Blue Jeans and Beer and Handsome John. We talked about race number 6 as a race for Broken Key. For me, the 7th, Lila's Lucky Lady, is an absolute must use. And then I'd probably need to use those 4 at least in the last 4, 6, 7, 8. I really did think that was a tough, and maybe even a race where a sequence I'll play a pick 5 where I can maybe key in on Broken Key, key in on Lila's Lucky Lady, and it'd be nice to be able to press that all button in the last. So from talking to you, it sounds like you like to have the kind of approach where you play a couple different tickets as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big advocate. It's a little easier with pick 4s than it is with pick 5s.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Trying to play 2 tickets, and if you get the 3 races right where you have the exact same horses, I use all 3, or on both tickets I'll use the same horses, and then 2 races I'll single one and go deep in the other, and more often than not you're actually cheering against your second ticket if you get your single home in the first leg.
Yep. So give us some of the real important, you kind of mentioned them throughout, but some of the must use horses for you and like real important horses to make sure to include on Wednesday.
Absolutely, and I see it similar to you. There's a few horses that I'm going to try and take a stand against and beat, but one of my tickets will go through Fayette Warrior in race number 5, and then Broken Key in race number 6. Those are going to be kind of my two keys to the sequence. I do think you have some vulnerable favorites later on, with some others in there. In race number 7, you've got Slingshot Mission, Hush Y'all, 1 for 17 with the Bug in the saddle, who had a nice meet at Oaklawn. Only one workout to show. Hush Y'all is going to be a play against for me. And then in the last race, I think Pine Grove Road off of a long layoff is definitely a spread race in there. Not sure what to make of Off the Meds. 3-1 coming in from Ian Wilkes Barnes, and Gulfstream Park will take plenty of wagering action, but more so play against for me versus horses that I absolutely love. I will single Broken Key on one ticket for sure, and what could be a wide open race.
Brian, I'm going to split up our conversation because we're going to talk about Wednesday and Thursday. So I'm going to split it up into each day. That way, if people are just maybe playing Wednesday, they'll hear the Wednesday stuff. Or if they're playing Thursday, they'll hear the Thursday stuff. So give us some of your plugs. Where can we find you online, social media, if we want to follow along? And give us a little reminder, what's the schedule and the post times out there and everything going on over at Canterbury.
Yeah, so this week we'll go Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday at 4:30. Our pick 5 is usually the last thoroughbred. 5 races. We are a mixed meet, so you want to pay attention to what races, as they'll adjust depending on how many quarter horses we have at the end of the night. But next week we'll start Monday through Thursday at 4:30. Again, the 10% takeout. Big advocate for the pick 4s as well. You can follow me on Twitter. All my picks will be up on Twitter. Some videos about Canterbury Park and some inside tips. If you're new to Canterbury, we want to welcome you, and also some things that you just won't know if you're not playing it consistently. So you can follow me on Twitter at MrB_CBY analyst, and I'll try and post as many picks and things to help you make money on Twitter as I can.
Brian, thank you very much. We're going to just pause this for a second and hear from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be back with Brian talking some Thursday racing in just a moment. So don't go anywhere on That's What G Said. One of the sponsors of That's What G Said podcast is Cindy Carava, full-service realtor, and I am here over in Glendora at Coldwell Banker with Cindy Carava. Cindy, how was 2019 for you? Tell us a little bit about what kind of stuff you were working on.
Hi, Gino. Thanks for having me. 2019 was just really great. I had a great year selling homes all the way from Altadena, Arcadia, Monrovia, out to Upland and Ontario just recently. The market has been really good. We're looking forward to 2020 with an increase in home prices about 5.8% this year, opposed to last year where it was a little softer. We saw more like homes averaging about 3.5% in increase in value. It's also looking great for buyers. The interest rates right now are going to be staying under 4%. So if you've been on the fence about thinking about buying a home, now is the time to do so, with interest rates still staying low.
And you offer more services than just buying, selling, and leasing homes. Tell us about some of the other services that you offer and what a full-service realtor really is.
So you're right, Gino. Besides me being a full-service realtor of finding properties for my clients to buy or selling their homes or finding rentals for them, I also have a plethora of resources like handyman, contractors, electricians, plumbers. If you're thinking about getting a home loan, I actually work with 2 great lenders that I can recommend to anybody.
And you're all over the internet, social media, websites. Let us know some of the places where we can find you. I know I've seen some reviews on Yelp and on Zillow. Everyone always has positive things to say. Everybody hears me raving about you all the time. But where can everyone else find out information about you or contact?
Thank you, Gino. Yeah, I am on Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn. And you can contact me on my website, which is www.cindycarava.com, or my email, which is cindyc.realtor@gmail.com, or feel free to call or text me on my cell phone, which is 626-394-6400.
Cindy is awesome. She's one of the kindest and most genuine people I've ever met. I promise you, you will enjoy every minute you interact with her. So thank you very much, Cindy. Appreciate all of your support from That's What G Said podcast.
Thank you, Gino. Have a great day, everyone.
Big thank you to Brian for talking some Canterbury with us. You're going to hear him again in just a few minutes talking Thursday Canterbury. Let me give you just kind of a one or two approaches at the pick 5 that I'm looking at. So if you were looking for maybe like a smaller, more affordable ticket, maybe you start in race number 4 with 2-7, with 2-4-8, with 1-2-6-7, with 1, with 4-6-7-8. We'll also play, I like closing with 4-6-7-8. I would look between singling the 1 Broken Key in the 6th or the 1 Lila's Lucky Lady in the 7th. How I'm approaching the ticket, I make sure to use the 7 Semi-Charmed Day. I would even be okay maybe singling in the 4th right off the bat. In the 5th, the 8 Blue Jeans and Beer, Handsome John or Must Use is on my ticket, so I generally play 3 or 4 different tickets. I'll always try to play one maybe where I start with all and then one where I end with all. And in this case, I could do that with a couple of singles in the middle. So best of luck on Wednesday at Canterbury. Let's get you over to Thursday, and let's start with Belmont Park for Thursday. 4 plays for Thursday, June the 25th at Belmont Park. We will begin in race number 1. Get those past performances out. 6 furlong turf sprint for New York bred maiden 40s. These are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And I'm going to go to the outside with Greats. So she's 3 races into her career. This will be career start number 4. And she's now going to drop into the maiden claiming ranks for the first time. She hasn't really been completely overmatched against maiden special weights, but this feels like a drop that will really, really help her out. So she tried dirt in her first 2 starts. That was back in December of 2019 and then February of 2020. And she was off for a few months. She came back on June the 4th, and she went 6 furlongs on the turf, so first time on the grass. She was able to sit close and show a little tactical speed, but she ended up tiring and didn't finish that day. She should be able to use that speed, because she broke pretty well, to secure a good start from the outside. I mean, she was right with the leaders, she was second, and she was just off, and then she tired and she ends up backing up. So now you're going to drop, you're going to go second time on the grass, you're going to go second start off the bench. You should be a little more fit today. And I think with the outside draw, sometimes it's the same with the inside draw. We think of it as a negative all the time, and a lot of times it is, right? Because you're going to lose a bunch of ground, or from the inside, you're going to get in trouble, you're going to get shuffled. But in particular cases with certain particular horses, and I'm thinking this might be one of them, if the plan has to be with Greats, okay, we're drawn to the outside, let's get aggressive. And that doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go gun to the lead, but let's break really, really well, and we can get over and maybe tuck in and sit in a good spot, because there are a couple other speeds in here. Love Me Tomorrow is quick. The Foozy is not exactly slow. Midnight Banker has speed. There's other speeds in here, but I think this outside draw may help Greats have to get into a nice close position early. A little more on the drop, second time off the bench, second time on the grass. That's the number 11 Greats. If we can get around 3-1, we'll make a win wager in race number 1 at Belmont on Thursday. Let's go to the 4th at Belmont. And we're going to go to the number 8, Siding Spring. Again, trip will be really important with this one, so I don't want to take any lower than 3-1 on Siding Spring. I feel like this is a great spot for him. He's a pace factor, and he's drawn well. He can sit off and pass horses if need be, and I think that's going to have to be the case in here today. He'll probably have to sit third. There were a couple quick horses down towards the inside. Abiding Star is pretty quick. Musical Heart is pretty quick too. Wouldn't be any shock if he's very close to the lead. So that may end up putting Siding Spring in third, which is fine. He's ultra consistent on the grass. He just has to make sure he doesn't get caught up too much in an early pace battle, and he has to try to relax a bit early. But you get a good run for your money with him, because he's going to be forwardly placed and he's going to be in the mix throughout. Let's hope he can sit third and not get caught up in the three-way battle. That's in race number 4. That's the number 8, Siding Spring. If we can get 3-1, that's worthy of a win wager. Make sure to use in all of your exotics. Let's get to race number 6. And I'm going to go to the 4 in here, Homedale Park. So, you go through this filly's career. She hasn't done a whole lot wrong. She's been on the grass a couple times. Both of those were sprinting. She's actually faced Stakes Company a couple times, maybe a little overmatched against them, and you can make excuses for those. She just was in a little bit too tough facing Stakes Company. So she on January the 20th showed us that she can go a mile on the main track when she did so at Aqueduct, and she was third, and she didn't run that poorly behind Ice Princess, who came right back out of that race to win her next start. Homedale Park, last out, sprinting on the grass. This was on June the 5th. She drew post 11. She was 8th, 9th early on. She was not that far out of it, only about 5 or 6 lengths off, but she was in the 2 path, so you're towards the back of the pack, you're wide. She angles out about 4 or 5 wide in the stretch. She sort of got pushed in a little bit, but she got pushed in by the eventual winner who kind of blew by her and beat her to a spot. She closed pretty well, and if she had a smoother journey late, she would have been third, which would have looked even better on paper. Now you're going to go second off the bench. You're going to stretch back out. You're going to get back to the dirt. And she should be sitting much, much closer in here. Homedale Park, the number 4. If we can get anything around 3-1, we'll make a win wager. Make sure to use in all of your exotics. Let's get to the stakes race. It's in race number 8. It is the easy goer. And we have a group of 6 3-year-olds lining up in here. I look at the one Celtic striker from the inside. I think his plan has got to be to show speed. That's how he's going to be successful. He'll be right on the lead. Casino Grande. He's raced twice. He sat off the pace a little bit last time out, but he wasn't far off, and he's not exactly slow. He went gate to wire in his debut. I think he's going to be close up and forwardly placed in here. Prodigious Bay. Speed faded a little bit last time out. He has shown speed and tactical speed in all of his starts. I think he's going to be right on the lead and very close to it. So we have already Celtic Striker, Casino Grande, and Prodigious Bay. I think the 3 of them are all going to be close up, and I think they're all going to hurt each other's chances of winning this race. Then who are the next horses that we look to? Okay, it would be Informative, Sonneman, and Toy, right? Well, Informative is not in the greatest of form right now, and I don't know if he is quite good enough to beat this group. Sonneman, I think he's good enough, but with his running style, he might be a little bit too far back. I wouldn't be shocked if they go quick early in here if he gets outrun a little. To me, it feels like the horse who is going to sit a perfect trip is the horse to the outside. That's the number 6, Toy. He's looking for his 3rd win in a row. People see that he started for a maiden claiming tag, and I think sometimes you'll think he's a little too cheap, or not quite the quality to beat a group like this. And maybe down the road, he's not going to be as good of a 3-year-old as these. But in this small field, the way this race shapes up, he really should get a great trip. Last time out, he was close up, but he was, he's in between horses. He's like 4th or 5th, but he's only 3 lengths off at the most. He held his position really nicely in some tight quarters. Then he got a slight shuffle. He angles to the 2 path, and he just loaded. And he had to try to alter course a few different times. He's looking for room. He finally got a little clearance late down the middle of the racetrack. Toy. He feels like he's going to sit a great trip in here. He's sharp. He's on the improve. He's progressing and taking steps forward. I like where he's drawn with the way this race sets up. That's the number 6, Toy. Make sure to use him in all of your exotics. Let's make a win wager. If he's anything over 7-2, like if he's 4-1, anything above that seems like a nice price on Toy. So the Thursday Belmont, race number 1, the 11 Greats. Race number 4, the 8 Siding Spring. Race number 6, the 4 Homedale Park. And in race number 8, the 6 Toy. Let's get you to Churchill Downs now. And over at Churchill Downs, we have an interview with Chris Tivnan, who's going to be joining us for the first time on That's What G Said. As we go race by race, Thursday, Churchill Downs, we introduce Chris to you, and then we go through every race for the Churchill Downs Thursday card. Good luck, kick back, and enjoy. Very excited to have a couple of first-time guests on this episode of That's What G Said. You just heard from Brian Arrigoni talking some Canterbury racing. Now we're going to talk some Thursday racing, and we're going to be talking about racing from June the 25th. To join us to break down the Churchill card for Thursday on a big Churchill week, closing week. They have a ton of stakes races on Saturday, the end of what's been a very successful quick meet for them. We have Chris Tivnan joining us. Chris, how you doing, buddy?
Hey, Gino, how's it going, buddy?
Doing very well. Chris, someone that I've gotten to know over on social media as of late, lots of interactions, and we've gone back and forth and talked about one day bringing him on and hammering out some races. So, Chris, before we get into the Thursday card, which is going to be our focus. Let's talk a little bit about you. Let's introduce you. Who are you? How do you get into horse racing? Give the folks out there a little background.
All right. Well, I'm a Louisville guy. Been around the track my whole life. My dad and his dad were big horse racing people. I've been to the Derby, every single one, since I was probably 5 or 6 years old. Yeah, and there's been a member of the Tivnan clan at Derby since I want to say like 1950.
Great.
So, yeah,
Cool.
yeah. Me and my dad have been going. We drank those $14 beers out there and had a good time. But, yeah, it's been a great meet so far. The worst weather we've had was on Father's Day.
That's so key. That's so key.
Yeah,
especially at a time like this when it could go either way, right? This is like a time of the year when some meets, especially when it's short and everything got backed up, they've been really lucky. And being where they're located at Churchill at a time like this of the year, being in the middle and kind of in the Midwest there, when so many tracks on both sides of the country were, in limbo, they were able to and, like Oaklawn was getting those really big fields, but with Churchill, you have the grass racing too. So they were really able to capitalize, especially those first couple of weeks of Churchill, man. We saw some allowance races that were deeper than grid stakes races.
Oh, when they announced, just even the opening day, when they announced the first 2 cards, I mean, the excitement was unbelievable. And it was just so nice to see the familiar paddock back on TV, even though we couldn't be out there. Just so looking forward to having a track that I know in comparison to, you've been betting these tracks that you never heard of or less familiar with. So it's nice to be back for sure.
Yeah, we got a lot of Fawner, Will Rogers. A lot of people were playing some tracks that they hadn't played a whole lot of during that time period, and then once Churchill came back, they really benefited with some big fields and a good closing week. We kick off with the Thursday card, so let's get right on into Thursday handicapping. For those of you out there, get your past performances out. We're going to go right to Thursday, June the 25th. We're going to go right to race number 1 at Churchill, and we'll go a little race by race. We'll each give some thoughts on the fields and some of our selections for each one. So we kick things off with a group of maiden claimers, $75,000. They're going to go 7 furlongs here. These are fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up. They're, this isn't an easy race to start, Chris. There are probably 4 or 5 horses you can make a legitimate case for. I mean, the 5 inside horses you'd imagine will probably all take some money. The one, Our Secret Agent, is going to take a lot of money. I thought Hands Up also, makes a lot of sense, but I couldn't really get to the outside couple myself. I don't know how you saw this race, but to me, this wasn't a race that was maybe going to be a race where I think we're going to have a overwhelming favorite. Any of maybe the 4 inside horses could take money. It wouldn't really shock me. Who do you start with here?
Well, exactly what you just said. I don't think you want to take any of these horses to prom, but I landed on the number 2, Better with Age, simply based on the distance experience here. Maybe we switch to the dirt. We like it. I don't know. The 1 and the 4, I can see where they're going to take some money. But overall, I like the 2. You're getting the kid T-Gaff, who's having a great meet. I mean, the guy's been unbelievable on the dirt and on the turf here. So I would select the 2 here.
Yeah, he's been riding as well as anyone that's better with age. And I think you're right. For me, I lean slightly towards the 4, Hands Up, for a couple of reasons. If you go through her races, she's actually come out of some pretty decent races. In her debut race, there were a couple next out winners, a couple horses that were maiden special weight winners next out, so it was a really strong debut race. And she's been pretty good in her last couple starts. She tried the grass 2 starts back against a little bit better. And then most recently on May the 30th, she was a step slow, and then she took a few strides to get going. I think because of the slow start, she ends up getting forced into a kind of a tough spot, in a tight spot. She was in behind horses. She ended up being probably in the 3rd flight of horses instead of the 2nd flight. And that may have been the difference between getting a lot closer. She probably was going to win that race, but she might have been able to finish a lot closer, win 2nd. I think I prefer her, I guess, of the 4 horses here. So for me, it's Hands Up to start. Again, wouldn't be shocked to see any of the inside horses run well in here. Obviously, Our Secret Agent could be my concern. Maybe she's the lone speed, But with Chris, what's nice with Better with Age is you get a filly who gets another opportunity. You know that 7 furlongs to a mile is a distance that should be no problem for Better with Age. So, yeah, a couple different ways to go. Wellington Wonder, we'll see if she can try to replicate the debut performance in September. But she was second that day, but she was 70-1, and then she didn't come back and run well. Although if you look at who she ran into in her second start, it was Skydiver, who's come back to become quite a nice filly. So maybe some mixed signals with her there in that opener, but not the easiest opener on Thursday to get things started in race number 1. Let's get to the second race. And, I think when you're handicapping this race, you probably have to look at it and say, okay, Tom Amoss obviously has a very strong hand in here.
Right.
I think the key to this race really, Chris, is where are we going to get the speed from? And if the very hot riding Tyler Gaffalione, as you mentioned, if he can get a little bit aggressive with this filly down on the inside, she's been facing some really, really nice ones. If she gets the lead, she could be tough in here.
Yeah, and like you say about the Tom Amoss horses, obviously we have Gone Glimmering and then Magine in here. I'm going to lean towards Magine, or however you want to say it, the 6 horse. The James Graham, Tom Amoss on the lead has been a really good winning or at least place and show for me at Churchill this year. And this is a race where he has a horse with a little bit of speed. If you go back to that December 19th, he was very close, ended up winning by 3 with James Graham at $30,000 claimer. I think that's the trip you want from the 6. And that's where I would lean on with the 7, who I don't know if you like the 7 at all, but I found the 7 very interesting, and I think he could float up a little bit.
Yeah, you look at West Bank Baby, she comes out of that race behind Casual, who was really good. And then just because Casual didn't come back in that Gay Mean race, I think sometimes people will see Casual and say, oh, well, she just got beat. She just got beat by a really tough filly in a much better spot, too. West Bank Baby is interesting. Yeah, I think I guess I can't really get too outside the box in here either. For me, it would be, the 2 outside horses, the 2 inside horses. Persian Queen would be the other one that maybe I would slightly lean towards. She's another one that's coming out of the Casual race. And I think that she got the race under her belt, just like West Bank Baby did last time, got the little prep off the bench. I think this is going to be a trip that's actually going to fit well for her. And you mentioned with Magine going back and looking at a race that you hope she could work out a trip just like that December race. I'm hoping Persian Queen can go back and work out a trip like that October race at Keeneland, where she sat 3rd, not too far out of it. And that kind of a trip would go a long way in here. So, yeah, I mean, tough races in the first 2, but nothing too crazy as far as getting a big price. I think I can find one a little bit more in the 3rd, Chris, as we turn to race number 3. One horse I'm going to have to mention to let people know to use in your early pick 5s or pick 4s or however you're playing these races at Churchill. I like the 5 a little in race number 3, Stroll in the Bayou. I think she gets with her running style, she's going to be able to get a jump on one of the deep closers, maybe like Zabava in here. And it looks like with Foxtail, who's pretty quick, I think Diamond Coat is pretty quick. I think it's going to be a Stroll in the Bayou sitting maybe 4th or 5th in here at a really nice price, getting a jump. She's going to go second start off the short little break. She gets back to the grass where she's run well. She's really run well on all surfaces. She's pretty consistent overall. So for me, I'm going to make sure I use Stroll in the Bayou in some of the exotics. Who are some of the horses that you need to use in the 3rd?
Well, and that's exactly right. You could go with, I think, the 2, who's an interesting horse, obviously. We've got 4 wins in a row. What happens when you come into Churchill, I don't know, but no way I wouldn't use that horse on my pick 4, pick 5s. I'm going to take a shot in here. This is going to be my first shot of the day. I'm going to go with the 4 Dutch Treat.
Here we go. I like it.
I like it. You look back at that, which I'm hoping is going to be a long shot anniversary here. When actually he was about 3-4 to 1 that day. You go back to June 21st on the turf. It's the last turf start, kind of around this time of year. Ran second by head, almost won the race. Kind of got caught there. But in these turf races, this horse to me is pretty versatile. It looks like he can sit off, kind of sit mid-pack, or if nobody's up there on the lead, we can sit a little closer. But Bejarano has been hot. This just seems like one of those races where it might seem obvious, like, okay, I'm going to take a couple of the lower priced horses. But to me, this is a race where I'm going to take a shot with the 4 Dutch Treat. I just think that 15 to 1 is probably going to float up, hopefully.
We got, Mad Grace is one who you mentioned, might be able to sit very nicely. A horse who just loves to win races. She's won the last couple times we've seen her on the grass. You have Zababa, who will, draw back and come running. Diamond Coat will be probably part of the pace. And then Holly Golightly could work out a trip from the inside. Many directions to go. And in a wide open race like that, that's the best race to lean towards prices, which is what Chris and I are going to do in this race number 3. We'll kind of look towards the 4 and the 5 as top selection horses to make sure to use in some of your exotics. I thought the 4th race was in the early pick 5. Yeah. I'm gonna try to play at least one ticket where I go all, honestly.
Oh, no doubt.
Because there's just a field of 7 here that you can make cases for and against every one of them. I don't even know if we're going to have a horse in this field that's double-digit odds, and it'll be one of those races where any one of 3 or 4 different horses could go favored in here. So no real strong opinion for me, honestly. I could see many things happening. Do you have a strong opinion in this race?
Well, I have a strong opinion about 2 that I think are similar, which is the 5 Galindo and the 3 Marshall Eagle. I think that the 20,000 level fits for both of these. Especially for the 3, I think the rider upgrade. I think Miguel Main is a fantastic rider. I like Angel Montano, the trainer. I wouldn't be surprised if he won. Out of those 2, I see as a similar. My top pick in here, I'm going to kind of cop out and go back to the kid, but I'm going number 2, Holy Muchacho for Kenny McPeak. I like the drop, continuing to drop to 20. He kind of ran at the 30s, back to the 20s. And I think you get Gaffley on again. He's been on this horse recently. This horse is staying at Churchill. He didn't have crazy good work, but he had a nice work coming out of that June 4th race. I think he fits as much as anybody.
A race where I have no strong opinion. Look to 2, 3, and 5 as some of the horses for Chris in race number 4. We get to race number 5, Chris, and I think this will probably be one of my stronger opinions. I don't think there's a whole ton of speed in this race, and I think there's a big opportunity that Bejarano can steal this race with
Absolutely.
Bucky. Bucky, he looks like he sat 3rd. He did, though, but it was a really quick race he was coming out of. He was not far out of a quick pace where they went sub 22. He just couldn't go on again with them. That was his first start in a few months. That was against maiden 50s. Now you take another drop in here. You're facing the maiden 30 level, and you got that race under your belt. I think Bucky has a major opportunity to try to steal this race. And then you got the class dropper of the 9, Zapper Van Winkle. My only concern with him is that he's cutting back to 6 furlongs. He doesn't have a whole lot of speed. So I think he can absolutely win, but he would be a hard horse for me to single because of his running style. I could very easily see him getting caught up, a little too far back and running on late for second. So for me, I feel like I can cover this race pretty well with 6-9. There are others to use, but I like the 6 a little bit, and I think the 9, if they go a little too quick, I think he's the one that will come running.
Yeah, and I have the 9 on top in here too. The 7 I don't really trust as much. I'm more kind of worried about him giving in on the stretch run like he's done a couple times. He's failed as the favorite. The one that interests me, and you stole my thunder there, you're kind of catching the pattern with Bejarano on Bucky, is actually like the 1 a little bit. You get Alvarado back up.
Sure.
Going 3rd start. I would say 3rd start off, maybe a secondary layoff, kind of.
Third of the year, yeah.
Gelding, $30,000 last time coming out of Orb. I think this one has just as good a shot as anyone, especially at this $30,000 level. But I think you could definitely get by in here with the 9 or the 6. And the 6 on paper isn't the fanciest horse, but I really think, it wouldn't be a surprise. I would still play him at 3-1.
Sure, but yeah, I completely agree. Even if he's that's a good value line for him. Like 3-1, 7-2, I'm completely fine with that. And he might get played a little more in here. Like I wouldn't be shocked if he gets played more than even a horse like Shaw, who ran fine at the maiden 30 level last time out. But I would prefer Bucky to Shaw there and Zapper Van Winkle. I'm glad you mentioned the 1 Sire's Orb, who I like. When you see a horse like this, to me, sometimes it's like they're just figuring out where they belong, and then you drop to the maiden 30 level, the maiden claimers, and you run really well. Okay, that just seems like he fits nicely with this group. He would be absolutely no shock in here. So, the 6 is a horse that we'll definitely both be including, and the 9, probably the one to beat. Another a little look to the 1 who could sit a good trip from the inside there in race number 5 at Churchill. Let's get to race number 6, and this is going to be a group of fillies and mares, 3-year-olds and up, which have never won 3 or 3-year-old fillies. They'll be traveling a mile on the turf course. The horses for me to start with are the 4, Dominette, who's going to be stretching back to a mile, and she's coming out of those 5.5 furlong races. She could be right on the lead in another race that, doesn't look like it really has that much speed. There might be 1 or 2 other horses that we can see sitting close, but I think naturally stretching back out from these races, we see when she goes a mile, she's right on the lead or sitting very close. I thought the 7 would be tough. Who were some of the horses that you start with?
Well, yeah, and I like your idea on the 7 there. I mean, I think there's 5 or 6 horses you can make cases for, and I totally agree with you on the 4. You get Hernandez. We definitely want him to be on the front here. I think this is the type of race that Brian Hernandez could absolutely win, and I think 9-2 is a fair price.
Mm-hmm.
What an angle, whether it is real or not, that kind of drives me crazy, which I want your take on, is between the 10 and the 12 here. So you have Florent Giroux, who jumps off the 10, curiously. He's ridden 3 times for Greg Foley, and he hops on the 12 for Stanley Houff. And it's what do you think about that? Do you go, Giroux maybe had his choice, and he's, made a pick, and the 10 picks up Bejarano, who we obviously like, and he seems to be a turf specialist, and you're getting 8-1. I think the better value is going to be in the 10. I know the 12 Quiet Company is going to take some money here, but I would kind of side with the 10. But I kind of wanted to get your opinion on that.
Yeah, that's always something to take a look at when you have a jock going one way or the other. And so you would look at Quiet Company, absolutely. If this is I think if she draws in, she's going to be really, really tough. But I agree with you on just playing off of the horse itself. I would prefer the 10. I would prefer her, at a little bit better of a price. And so of the 2 of them, if they were close in price, I would prefer the 10. But it's an angle that I definitely look at, and I think it's harder, I guess, in this situation because we don't know if the 12 is going to draw into this race because she's out on the also eligible list. So if she was in the body of the field a little bit more, then I think we could at least have even more of a conversation about it. But it's always a fun angle to bring up when we play these. Did the jockey know what's going on? Was this like a race they entered late and they ended up getting on this horse? Did they just plain out pick? I want to ride for this barn over that barn. It's really a fun conversation to have. And what's interesting is that we've landed on Bejarano a few times. So we're going to be, We're going to be all in on Bejarano. It looks like this week at Churchill on Thursday. Let's see. One other horse I kind of want to mention, and then you can finish off this race afterwards. The 6 Russian Girl. So, this barn doesn't have I think they have 3 horses right now, or a couple. They've won a couple races with this horse, Russian Girl. If you go back to that September 19th race, that kind of an effort would be really competitive in this group against the 40,000 non-winners of 2. She was 26-1 that day. She wanted a big price. And then since then, she's been in pretty tough. She's faced tougher. She hooked a horse named Rogue 2 in the last couple who was really quick and has rattled off a bunch of wins. I don't know if she's going to be good enough to win this race, not having run since January, but at a big price as a horse to use underneath, I'm going to throw her into one of my late pick 4s or 5s, and definitely in some of the exactas, tries, and supers. I think she could fall into a really good spot. So I have kind of, in a race that looks wide open, like I wouldn't be talking you off any of the inside 4 horses. We talked strongly about the 10 already, and the 7's probably the one to beat. But I'm going to kind of have 4 and 7 as my top tier with the 6 as my price horse behind them. How do you stack up this 6th race?
Well, and it's funny because I did notice that and then kind of scrolled a little bit past. But that does make sense. It looked like we were running a lot on the turf there with that 6 and 20-1. I mean, that's and what do you do with the 1, the Zerlin? You get Lannery on the rail, which I've watched that movie 1,000 times this year. And running into
coming out of a couple races, much better races, yeah.
What do you do? Could sit the trip, versatile. It looks like wants to be a little bit more forwardly placed, but this is a race. I hate to cop out and say all, but no one would surprise me.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like any 1 or 2, like the 3 is a little low on numbers and figures, but she wouldn't be surprising if she jumped up and ran another good effort. The 2 has some races that are winnable there. That's what makes this race difficult. You can see many horses in here with the ability to jump up, and there have been a lot that haven't been quite consistent. That's why they're in a race like this. I think a lot of these fillies, it mirrors their connections, might have thought they were a little bit better, and this might be a little softer of a spot that they wanted. Hopefully they can get, maybe a confidence boosting type race to pick things back up. Yeah, not an easy race in here. And an opportunity to catch a price, maybe even underneath price with a horse like the 6 Rushing Girl. And we went through a lot of this field, talked about even starting with the 10 on the outside with Chris. So a sixth race that will not be easy to kick off your late pick 4. We move into now probably the more quality races of the day. In some of the last couple, the 7th race, non-winners of 2, optional 62. A couple horses that I want to start with, but what makes it difficult, like a horse like High Regard, who I look at getting back to the dirt, but then you have a barn who's just been really, really cold. It's hard to, want to key in on a horse like that when their barn is struggling so much. And again, that's Bejarano, who,
right.
Someone that we've been looking to all day long. I think you can make some excuses for her last few. And when we talk about all races, just kind of look at the morning line in this race. You don't have anyone who's lower than 3-1. You don't have anyone who's, higher than 8-1. Another one where, any one of, if you told me Rockin' Ready or High Regard or Tiz Ella or Sarah C ended up going off favorite in here, it wouldn't shock me.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This is just one of those weird races where it feels like everybody's going to be, 4 or 5-1.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I'll go ahead and say this. I'm not the hugest fan of Garcia at Churchill this year. He gave our Moon Over Miami what I would call a lackadaisical ride last time out, and then that ended up coming back to win. I think Talamo might have ridden that horse. We were talking about that horse the other day.
Yep.
So against my better judgment, I'm going to settle on the 5 here just because of the last recent effort and, Joe Sharp. But we're talking 3-3 in the money this year. And I think that effort puts him right back. But you could go with the 5, the 3, or the 1. I like the 1 a lot in here, and I like the 3, the Talamo and Lucas combo. But with the 1, you have those 2 Oaklawn dirt races that were at a mile. He fits. And I think Giroux is going to, I would anyways, try to replicate that 27th of February trip. So nobody would surprise me. I know it's a cop-out, but another tough race.
We hit it a few times throughout the card, and I'll mention afterwards kind of how I'll approach a couple different, maybe pick 4, pick 5 sequences. I'm absolutely going to play one where you have all in here. You can you mentioned what's funny, the 1, 3, and 5, and then everybody else, like the 7 is the horse who I started with. Go back to Tiz Ella, and with Tiz Ella, you can make excuses just for her last 2 because they were both followed by layoffs. And if you look at the races right before those, you have a good first-level allowance win right here at Churchill Downs. That race would win this. Goodbye Earl put a line through the grass race last time out. She had a little bit of trouble 2 starts back when she was facing Sarah C. She'll have to improve a little bit, but she's not a horse who's like a filly who's towered over by any means in this spot. So again, we don't have necessarily fields of 12 throughout this card at Churchill, but even in race number 1, when we were looking at it and going, there are going to be a couple 3 or 4 to 1 shots in this race. It feels like there are 3 or 4 races like that throughout the card. Those are the sequences that are really, really tricky because you, as a horse player, you can't go 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 by 4 at every race.
Right.
You have to one race take a stand and pick and choose where you're gonna stand, and so we'll have to do that at some point. But this wasn't that kind of a race for me.
No, we go back to November, just like you're saying with the 4 Tiz Ella. We go back to November. You're saying, well, we get Lannery back up. We're back to business as usual. Just needed a race. And that's one that could end up paying a very fair price, and I think totally fits in here, as well as 5 other ones.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So a difficult 7th race. I have a little stronger of opinion as we get to race number 8. This is a nice race too with some nice horses in here, but I think I can kind of feel confident keying in with a few. The one that I'm going to start with is 7 Nation Army. He just loves the 6 furlong trip. I think sometimes going a little farther than 6 furlongs is a tad too much for him. And he just really seems like he fits here. He has speed. He can sit just off. He's coming out of that race behind Volatile, who has instantly become one of the best sprinters in the land right now. And I think Seven Nation Army, he didn't race between March and June, came back on June the 6th. He might be a little bit tighter, now maybe a little bit fitter with that race under his belt. And we saw, you talked about Joe Talamo, who was really struggling. Him and Del Romans were both struggling. And then over the last week, they have completely turned the corner and started to win a ton of races. That's generally how it happens, right? Joe came out to Oaklawn. He was firing. He was winning everything. And then it kind of turned a little bit for him towards the end of Oaklawn. And then heading into Churchill, he was struggling. And now it looks like it's turned back the other way. He's winning races at Indiana Grand. He's winning races at Churchill. So I'm going to start with Seven Nation Army. And this will be a horse who, if I can get anything over 7-2, that's very fair. I might even be willing to single this horse on one or two of my different tickets because I always like to play a few different ones in here. I think he's in a really great spot in a race that people will probably spread out. So he'll definitely be on all my tickets. I'll mention a couple others afterwards. But who are some of the ones that stand out to you in this 8th?
Well, I mean, he hate me, obviously, the 9. But a little bit more exciting to me, I like the 2, I will say, was the top pick on my sheet here. So I totally agree with you. I want Talamo in this type of competitive short race. Was on the horse last time in a very nice race. But I totally agree with you on the 2 there. That's the one I'd be using. But if not, I would use the 3-9. I like Mucho, 7-2. Yep. Belmont has had some nice wins. This horse was running in some nice races. Only raced 2 times this year. But that last race, he just barely got beat. And that was at 6.5 furlongs. So we come back a little bit to 6. And I think this horse fits. This type of race, you get Le Peru, which, I've won and lost on Le Peru. I prefer the 2. But I think if you had to pick in here, I think you couldn't do anything wrong with the 2, 3, or the 9.
Yep, they're all very logical. I'll mention one other in here. The 8 is a horse who was claimed now multiple times for $80,000, which we don't see. And this is a horse who is a stakes winner who not long ago was, trying Grade 1 company in Southern California and wasn't completely disgraced behind Sistron. I think Line Judge you can absolutely make a case for. So I think you hit the logical horses. I would add Line Judge onto them. For me, it would be kind of 2, 3, 8. You mentioned the 9 that you'll be using along with them in the 8th race here. So hopefully we can get, I think if we got Seven Nation Army at 5-1, we'd both be very, very happy with that. In a race where he looks very tough, race number 8. So if we're closing things out and we're alive in a pick 4 or a pick 5, who do you need in this 9th race? Who do you want to have to feel confident going into this last race?
Well, that's what I love about this last race here. It's a 1 1/8. It's maiden special weight 79 on the turf. I mean, this is the kind of race where you really want to enjoy it. I mean, because I think this is going to be a really interesting race. I think it's wide open. I settled on the 6 long pants required at 5-1 for Brendan Walsh and Ricardo Santana. I like this horse. I think this horse wants the 1 1/8. When I was looking at this race, I just kept coming back to when we go longer, at least recently, we do a little better. I think this horse is going to relish the distance. Santana is such a good stretch rider that I think if we can get clear, I don't think this is the most difficult group to beat, especially, and I don't think he's going to be 5-1. I think he's going to be much higher than that, but that's just me. That's the one I would go on top here.
She just looks like she's coming into this race really nicely. She progressed from her March to her May start. Now she's going to be making her 3rd start since November. She should be set for her absolute best. Take one more step forward on with the additional distance. I think she's a must use in a lot of exotics. I'll probably end up playing one ticket where I do single the 9, just thinking that she might be able to steal the race. Going 1 1/8, there is not that much speed in here. And Flabbergasted is coming out of a race where she ran really, really well. She has not done a whole lot wrong in her 3 starts. She's another who's kind of making her 3rd start of the form cycle. She should be set to take a big step forward here. If she can clear, I mean, if one of the, the lightly raced horses like the 5 Ships Creek or the first time starter doesn't go, Flabbergasted could have, a couple lengths on this field early and take them as far. And I really think this is where Giroux, bread and butter, getting the horse out on the front end, getting him to relax, just does such a phenomenal job with that. So I'll play one ticket where, and maybe the pick 5, I can use almost all the horses I like leading up to the ninth race and singling the 9, and then I'll come back and play another ticket where I use the 6, 7, and the 9. I think the 7 is interesting. I don't love playing first-time starters going this long generally, especially at a mile and 1/8, but this barn is actually capable of getting a horse to go long first time out, and the dam of this runner, a little bit sassy. She was a 3-time winner. All of them were going long on the grass. She was a stakes winner. She was multiple graded stakes placed. So there is some quality pedigree to this filly going long on the grass. And if she's able to show it right away, she could be a very, very nice price to close things out. So I'll make sure I use her on some tickets here. But I'll play one where I single the 9. I'll play another where I use 6, 7, and 9. You mentioned the 6. Any other horses that you would be using in this last?
Yeah, and I mean, I don't know that I would have this horse to win, but definitely in my exotics here, I kind of like the 4, the Source from Corden with Chris Landeros, Ian Wilkes. That's a good combo. Maybe this horse just needed a race, and it looks like in that mile on the 16th, I don't know that was that bad of an effort. I think, in coming out, anybody could win this one, and if, say, the 4 wins, you go back and look and say, well, this was a 3-time turf starter. Maybe we just needed the race in April. And I don't hate it, especially at 12-1.
No, she's coming out of some strong races too, because just from a pure speed figure standpoint, the race where she was 9th last time out, that is not far off of the races that the horses who have been second and close to winning have run in this race. So it just shows you it was a strong race she comes out of. The race came back and graded out well. They jump up at a price and win all the time. So I think you nailed the other horse in here. That would be another one if I was going a little bit deeper. I think the 5 is kind of a wild card. People see that really quick work over at Keeneland, and maybe we can assume that the plan for this filly is, okay, hey, let's try to send her long on the grass and see if we can get her out front, because there really isn't a lot of speed. If they want to get aggressive and maybe Flabbergasted sit, then maybe Ships Creek can get out there and hang around for a price. But I think you mentioned the horse right away, Long Pants Required. That's one that's a must use. And then I like the 9 Flabbergasted on the lead, and Audrey's Attitude as a live firster that can make a little bit of noise here. So yeah, throughout the card, if you look back, Chris, throughout your past performances, give us 1 or 2 horses throughout the card that you think the folks out there should absolutely use in some of their pick 4s, pick 5s, however they're placing. Who are 1 or 2 horses throughout the day that you like the most?
I'm going to go back to Bucky. That horse in race 5, it doesn't look fantastic on paper, but with Bejarano, it just seems like that horse has a lot of upward improvement. And then
Bucky should be sitting a great trip with the speed in there. Yep, one more step forward on the drop. Bucky's absolute must use for me.
And and like we said in race 5, you can use Zapper Van Winkle, but it just seems like you're going to get not that great value on the 9, the 7 in that race, and Bucky, could float up. The other one I like is our West Bank Baby for Calhoun, and that's in race 2. I do think the 6 is going to win that race in race 2. That's one of my more strong opinions of the day, but I could see where with the blinkers off, this one surprises, even though I do believe in the 6 in that race. Those would be my 2 that I would definitely take a shot with.
Chris Tivnan hanging out with us for the first time on That's What G Said podcast. Chris, thanks for going through the Churchill Thursday card with us. It was a lot of fun. Hopefully we directed the folks to a couple of winners out there, and I'd love to have you back more when I guess either Churchill back or Keeneland. So when they're not at Churchill, where are some of the other tracks that you're focusing in on and playing?
I love Keeneland, and I like Oaklawn, and I bet quite a few Belmont pick 5s. Hit a couple pick 5s up at Belmont this meet too. So those are definitely my 3 main tracks.
Chris, let the folks out there again know, where can we follow you along on social media and talk some racing with you?
Yeah, it's at the Chris213 on Twitter for all your hot Louisville basketball and Louisville football takes. I'm a big football guy.
Nice.
Even though we're in a basketball state, I really like what's going on with the football program right now. So at the Chris213, if anybody wants to talk racing or football or basketball, I'm all for it. And I really appreciate you having me on, man.
Cool. Well, once we get into hopefully we can our fingers crossed with the college season. Once we get in there, we'll bring you on and preview Louisville's season coming up.
Oh, that sounds great. I'd love to.
Chris Tivnan, thank you so much, buddy. I appreciate that. good luck with the selections for Thursday, and we'll be going back and forth on social media.
All right, let's get some winners.
Okay, folks, that was Chris Tivnan. Don't go anywhere. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to hear from one of our sponsors, and we'll be right back here on That's What G Said. So I know you're a horse racing fan because you're in the middle of listening to the Wednesday and Thursday handicapping stuff. So stop right now. Go to oldsmokeclothing.com. oldsmokeclothing.com. Check this website out. If you're a horse racing fan, this is the way you can show the horse racing fan in you. We're talking t-shirts with horse names, polos, hoodies, long sleeves, zip-ups, hats. They have, the biggest races, slogans, logos, and then, more importantly, there's a deal right now on the Old Smoke Clubhouse for an annual fee of $500. This is Thoroughbred Racing's exclusive membership for the sport's most passionate fans. You get quarterly packages delivered to your doorstep, filled with apparel, items, experiences that encompass the lifestyle of the sport of kings. So you get 4 deliveries. You get the Eclipse, which ships the first week of January, the Derby, which ships the first week of April, the Spa, which ships the first week of July, and the Royal, which ships the first week of October. Each quarterly package will include a t-shirt only available to members, custom horse racing themed gift, and various package fillers. Annually, you get 1 Old Smoke Clubhouse headwear piece made exclusively for members. You get 1 Old Smoke Clubhouse designer outerwear piece made exclusively for members. And the membership perks of the Old Smoke Clubhouse. 20% off all orders at oldsmokeclothing.com. Access to the Old Smoke Clubhouse online forum. Video feature appearance on America's Best Racing.net, quarterly betting contest, cashback referral program, additional perks added quarterly. For more information, email clubhouse@oldsmokeclothing.com. Check out the website, oldsmokeclothing.com, and we've got a deal for you. When you use that promo code GINO, you get free shipping, no shipping costs there when you use that promo code GINO. Oldsmokeclothing.com, promo code GINO when you go to checkout. And speaking of checkout, make sure to give a look to that clubhouse that offer $500 annual fee, and you get packages delivered to you all throughout the year. Oldsmokeclothing.com, promo code GINO for free shipping. A big thank you to Chris coming on, talking some Churchill Downs with us for the first time. We go from one interview of Thursday Racing to the next interview of Thursday Racing. It's going to be Brian Arrigoni. He's back for part 2. We're going to talk Thursday, Canterbury, their late pick 5 on a loaded horse racing episode of That's What G Said. So Thursday, pick 5 at Canterbury. Get those past performances out for June the 25th. It's the pick 5 with Brian Arrigoni one more time. Back talking some Canterbury Park for Thursday. I had to take advantage because we had him before we had the racing for Wednesday and Thursday. So I figured Brian Arrigoni, the man over at Canterbury Park, we got to get 2 for 1 and talk 2 pick 5s with Brian. So Brian, thanks for hanging out with us again and discussing this Thursday pick 5 as we jump into the past performances for June the 25th. It's going to be race number 4 for that 10% low takeout pick 5. And again, we start going a mile on the turf course here. I thought this was kind of an interesting race because this is one race that we've seen where we do have a lot of horses who have not raced since last year. And then you have a horse like Rental Pool, who's one of the few with the recent races under their belt. So how do you treat a race like this kicking off this pick 5 sequence?
Yeah, it's tricky. I mean, I'm going to take a stand against Steal the Thunder. You've got the barn change. Joe Sharp did not come to Canterbury this year, so don't be too concerned about the Butsos moving their horses to Valerie Lund. But a horse like Steal the Thunder has been entered for a tag numerous times, now comes back in an allowance spot one of 2 ways, either drastic improvement that they want to keep the horse protected or just in a bad spot. And I think this one looks to be in a bad spot. A horse like Rental Pool with Novogratz Racing Stables and Mac Robertson, 1 for 1 on the turf, and they never saw the bottom of the tank with this 3-year-old filly on dialed in, won easily by open lengths on the turf, and that was a Minnesotan taking on Open Company. So the maiden breaking was against Open Company, and then they thought enough of to try the Northern Lights Debutante after that. So I think Rental Pool, if showing improvement on the turf, it could be a play for sure, but a horse like Chubby Royal has simply ran against better, 3 victories, little light in the win category, likes to settle for second, as you can see in the running lines, back-to-back second-place finishes with 9 seconds. But I do think To Be Royal is just going to be too much for this bunch, even off the layoff. But Ringstorff has success off of layoffs like this.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think those are the two horses to mention. She's been To Be Royal's been a 6-time beaten favorite, but she just really fits well in here. There's just no monsters. This is a great group for her to make her 2020 debut. To Be Royal will come running. The only other horse I'll use, I think, will be Rental Pool. I think I'm just using those two as Rental Pool maybe gets a little bit of a tactical jump on To Be Royal, and maybe that's the way Rental Pool can win. As you mentioned, I don't think we really even saw what this filly is capable of doing on the grass. She wasn't really tested, and she's one that got that June 20th prep race out of the way. She got that race under her belt, and I think she ran pretty well. She has legitimate tactical speed sprinting, so maybe she can either get in front of Nora's Legacy or maybe sit right behind Nora's Legacy and get the jump on the 7. But I think this is not a favorite, the 7 To Be Royal, that I would be trying to beat or take a stand against. She just looks really, really tough. And turning for home, if you don't have her in the first leg, she's going to come running and she's going to put a scare into you, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, To Be Royal is strictly the one to beat in here. The 15 second and third place finishes is a concern. So is the layoff, but it could be a race when it's all said and done. If you go more than just To Be Royal, you might be kicking yourself, because the next 4 legs, I think, are incredibly difficult.
Yeah, as we move to race number 5 at Canterbury on Thursday, I didn't think there was a whole ton of speed in this 5th race, and so I'm going to go to the way outside with Cowgirl Court. I just think she's set up pretty well for this race. She's second off the bench. She got her prep race out of the way on June the 10th when she was speed and fade. That was against maiden 15s. Now she drops into the maiden 75 level, where she's had her best success, where she was the runner-up a couple of times against a group like this. And she got pressed by a horse who was the favorite last time out. And that horse actually faded and finished 4th. So it wasn't like a race where the speed all fared that well. For me, I'm starting with the 13 Cowgirl Court, and this may be a horse I single on 1 or 2 tickets and just hope that she can clear from the outside.
Yeah, I don't have anything against your horse in Cowgirl Court at all. Speed in a maiden claiming race. This is a race I typically try and spread, especially at Canterbury Park. Last year we saw maiden special weight class droppers win races no matter what their form was. And I'm a track variant guy. I follow the variants and the variables, which you can find on Daily Racing Form right to the right of the odds. That's usually where my handicapping home is, my home base. And last year, for whatever reason, I was misled so many times where I played claimers that had better variables, than the main and special weight droppers, and we saw it. It's the biggest drop in the game. So I'm going to use the 4 horses dropping out of main and special weight company, no matter what their form is on paper. 2, 3, 10, and 11. And, the 2 and the 3 are both lightly raced. Vic Hansen can train for speed off of a long layoff. The 3 coming in off of a longer layoff. A little bit surprised that they're bringing this horse back. But, barn change, could be ready to go. You've got the white Lori Beeler riding for Michael Beeler, so this horse should be fit and ready to go. Can't imagine she's getting the call if that horse is going to run a lackluster last. And then Wee Miss Bernsey and Baby Gordita, who's your most likely favorite, in my opinion. 1 start, maiden special weight, now dropped in class. I'm going to just follow the class droppers, and hopefully we can catch a price. Yeah,
the 10 is a horse who I'll be absolutely using on a couple other tickets. I think you talked about the super live horses in here. What I like about Wee Miss Bernsey too is she's at least shown us some tactical speed in her starts, right? So we know now in start number 2, start number 3, she's got the ability to sit close. She had sort of a slow start. It wasn't really a ton, as it said, stumble at the start. She ended up sitting pretty close, and just if she's in that same spot against a much lesser group, she's just going to go a long way. And here, I think you hit on a lot of the horses. I mean, this race wouldn't shock me from the appeal of even the first time starter like the 1, Sweet as Can Be. I guess we'll probably have to see the kind of money she takes, but we won't be able to do that in the pick 5. You just wouldn't have to be a monster to beat a group like this with a ton of question marks. So from a multi-race exotic spread out kind of way, this is a fun race, because I don't, if I can take a stand on the 13 on 1 ticket and then, use a lot of the other horses you said on another, I think a lot of people are going to having to be spread out in this race.
Yeah, and a horse like Sweetest can be as a horse that I love to play against. If I get beat and I'm starting over in a rolling pick 3 or pick 4, so be it. But these are horses that in the long run will not provide you value in your pick 4s or pick 5s. You've got a horse that's purchased for $16,500, and I always compare it to a car. You buy a car and you ride in it once, and in this case they haven't even ridden in it, and they're already trying to sell it for half of what they bought it for.
Never
That's not
positive.
a good sign for me.
Nope.
And breaking from the rail makes matters even worse. There is zero value in getting a horse like Sweetest can be home on your pick 5 or pick 4 in my opinion.
You got to come out running from the inside. You talked about the fact that just with like a big name or connections that are known locally, you get a little bit more money too than you should. And even off of a pretty decent work last time out, this is a horse that'll probably take a little bit of money too. So yeah, I'm fine going against and looking for a little more value in that 5th race. We get to race number 6. We'll go a mile on the turf course here. These are Minnesota bred maidens, fillies, and mares, 3-year-olds and up. And there's a bomb that I'm going to be using. I don't know if she will be the kind of price that she is in the morning line. I mean, just looking overall at the turf form, Peyton Skydancer is a horse who I have to throw in on at least a couple different tickets. I mean, she owns the best turf races in here. The major problem, Brian, is that those turf races are back in, we're talking 2018, we're talking 2016 for some of them. I mean, but we're looking at a filly or a mare now who like 4 or 5 of those races would absolutely beat this group, and she has an excuse for the other one. It's just over the last year we've seen her run at Fawner a bunch and not really show anything. So she's like kind of a long shot I do want to use on some tickets, but I do think the 3 is pretty logical. Who's a half this one's got a pretty nice little pedigree here, the 3-year-old filly. She's a half bro to Hot Shot Kid, who was a good horse over at Canterbury, 575,000 earnings, a 14-time winner, multiple stakes winner. I think just won the 10,000 Lakes last week, right? And then a horse who's won on the turf.
Yeah, upset Mr. Jägermeister last week in what was an awesome race. Warren's Wish certainly can improve on the turf. The question mark is, are they trying something? They didn't get what they hoped for.
And just taking a shot. Yeah.
On the dirt, and now they're kind of out of options, and before they drop, they're going to give the horse a chance on the turf. I don't know what to make of this race. I think it's difficult. It's funny you bring up Peyton Skydancer. This is a horse, back in 2016 and 17, I needed this horse plenty of times. Never runs a step on the dirt, so that 0 for 18 is a little misleading. But there's so many opportunities that this 7-year-old mare, who's still a maiden now, has and just hung. I mean, just hanging so badly in the lane.
And is she the best? And is she even as good now as she was then when she used to hang? That's
a major question mark. But there's no world beaters in this group, and at 20-1, it's an excellent spot to take a chance. I'm all long shots in here. I think the 1 is vulnerable for Sarah's sake.
Me too.
It's vulnerable down on the inside. So I'm going to try a horse like Notepad, a first-time starter by Patio Prado, could take to the turf. Denny Velasquez, Joel Burnt. You never know what you're going to get going long, but the workouts are consistent, should be fit. There's not much value in Warren's Wish, but maybe a horse like Tantima, Valerie London, Leandro Gonzalez showed a little bit of life last time off the layoff. Now stretches out on the turf by FedBiz. You got Giant Causeway. Could take two turns on the turf in a big way. I think there's a race to try and spread, catch some value, and I am taking a stand against the 1.
Yeah, a couple of the horses to mention too, like the 8, Come On Sweet Pea, I kind of treat like a first timer. They actually took a shot against Open Company in the debut, and they hooked a sloppy racetrack, so you can easily make an excuse. The Dam was a winner on turf. Even the 10, Top Shelf Sarah, the Dam was a 4-time winner on the grass. Maybe she improves a little bit on the turf. The 11, Dreaming Biz, another one whose Dam was 4th for 21. And what I like about Dreaming Biz and the Dam Mesa Mirage's first couple starts were on the dirt, and then tried the turf and won at Canterbury pretty nicely, and all 4 wins were on the grass. This is also a horse who's a half to a $204,000 5-time winning multiple stakes winner. So I think the 11 makes a little bit of sense in here. The 12's Dam won on the grass. So yeah, this will be definitely a spread race to me. I'm with you on not loving the 1 for Sarah's sake. If we're going to be spreading out, let's be spreading out, looking for some prices here in a fun 6th race at Canterbury. We get to the second half of the pick 5 sequence with races 7 and 8. We start with the race number 7. And Brian, where do you start in this one?
This is where my second single comes, and it's going to come at a price in Marengo Tango.
Nice.
A cool story that not many people would appreciate. I think Tim Padilla got a lot of flack for bringing Marengo Tango back to the 8,000 level off a 5-year layoff, but brought in a perfect win record, was 2 for 2, I believe, as a 2-year-old or 3-year-old, and then came back as a 9-year-old and dismantled the field. It was the 8,000 non-winners of 3 at Tampa, but ran really well. And then after that, bit off a little bit more than they could chew on the turf. Ran evenly last time out at Tampa, and then at Canterbury 6.5 furlongs. I thought on a track that you could not close in at all for a horse who at 9 had never really shown the ability to track nicely and ran behind Trapalanda, who went off at 3 to 5 that day. And the time ended up fast, 1:15 and 4. The track was playing lightning quick. But Marengo Tango seems to be in good form. Second try over the turf. And a horse like Cabin John is a horse I love to play against. You've got 18 lengths beaten at Santa Anita, then switches barns, tries Fawner, beaten by 24 lengths, never involved in the last 2 starts. Now goes out for a barn who wins races, but there's no value at 5 to 2. So I'm going to try Marengo Tango. I think Dean Butler likely had opportunities to ride elsewhere in here. Kerry Raven has been using him a lot through the first 2 weeks, so he lands on Tim Padilla's horse, who had success down in Tampa. That's going to be a single for me. But outside of singling Marengo Tango, I think the race is wide open. Like I said, I'm playing against the 6, but you could use about 5 or 6 in here.
Yeah, you hit the horse, so I'm glad we all should be using Marengo Tango. Absolutely. I mean, Trapalanda, who he just ran into, that's an 11-time winner. That's won 4 of his last 5. Very rarely do we say the 9-year-old is lightly raced, but that is the case with Marengo Tango. You still feel like there's a little bit of upside with this guy who's still figuring things out. This is a great spot for him. The 9 Creative Art, I think, is super logical. He's a 10-year-old who just loves to win races, and he's drawn well to the outside. He could just fall into a really good spot. The 1 is the other horse I would like to mention, Omen of Change, because kind of a point that I was talking about a little earlier is those 6250 races at Oaklawn that he's exiting were really, really tough at this point. These are deep, full fields. You could see coming out of races with 11, 12, 11, 12, legitimate horses who were dropping down because there weren't a lot of other spots to run in at those times. They are better than they look on paper. And I think Omen of Change is a horse. I don't love the rail, but if they go a little too quick up front, this one could come rolling late. On a deeper ticket, I wouldn't talk you off using a horse like Long Station, but I'm against Cabin John as well. I would much prefer even using horses like the 2 Game Day Decision or the 3 Great Blake than Cabin John. But I'm with you. I think you have to start with Marengo Tango. For me, I have 5 and 9 as kind of my top tier, and then 5, 9, 1. And maybe my next ticket. But yeah, let's take some swings against Cabin John here, who, if he beats us, this is how I look at it a lot of times, Brian. Like, we're going to have 5 to 2 shots that we like a lot more that I'm okay with playing than with a horse like Cabin John.
Yeah, absolutely. And Creative Art is a horse I just didn't know what to do with. I love this horse. He brings his A game every time, but at the age of 10, I just don't think he's as good as he once was. He used to show a ton of speed. He is kind of, for an old guy, he has a tendency to act up at the gate, be off a little bit slow, like he did in the Honor of the Hero last year, where he was likely much the best and had to settle for second. So I just don't know what to do with Creative Art. I think, his best days, he would blow this field away. And if he is 2 to 5 or 3 to 5, maybe you follow the money with Creative Art. But I think he hit the nail on the head with the value in the 1 on Omen Change for a barn that doesn't claim a ton of horses. You've got Kelsey Haar, who had a very nice meet at Oaklawn Park riding for her fiance. So when Robert Klein uses Kelsey Haar, it's a play because she's getting all the live mounts. She's got the ring on her finger for Robert Klein, and Omen of Change comes back in a reasonable spot off a 6250 claim and only 1 work. This horse is most likely fit and ready to roll.
Well, hopefully we're going to be 4 for 4 heading into the 8th race at Canterbury on Thursday. We've got open $7,500 claimers, a 5 furlong turf sprint to close out the pick 5 sequence. And, on paper at least, it looks like the horses in the middle of the field will be the ones that I think take a bulk of the action and will probably be pretty tough. The 4, Epic Drama, the 5, Go Pro. Epic Drama is coming out of a race against a little bit better and probably sits a nice trip in here. Go Crow just missed for Diodoro, who's going to start to ramp up now. We imagine they're going to be filling the entry boxes after another really strong year. They're coming off of at Oaklawn and Will Rogers and all over the place. So I guess, how do you approach this 8th race? Who do we need to close?
I mean, I wouldn't feel comfortable unless I had the all button in here. I think this is a tough race. I don't know how you saw it, but I think this field is legit. You know, you've got Go Crows 2 for 2. The Connections made 42,000 last year, and then off of a brief layoff, they dangled that carrot for 4,000. They got away with it, but you've got Diodoro, who goes through horses in the claiming ranks and has plenty of success with Empire Racing Stables, who was our leading owners last year. They're not afraid to lose a horse. So for Go Crow, the low-level claiming doesn't concern me. There's some in here that I'd take a look at. A horse like Giant Gamble.
Yep.
Draw a line through last race. It was on the dirt. Loves our turf course. Could improve in a big way and has some races that would win this last year. But to be honest, it looks like an all race. If you can afford it,
I agree.
The 4 and the 5 do not have to win this race.
Yeah, I think if you can get to there in the last and have the opportunity, and we could, we've talked about some races where we might be able to shorten up earlier on. I thought the 3 with that kind of speed on the turnback could be really tough proven on the grass. And then the other one would be would be the 2. You know what? His 2 turf tries were going, 7.5 furlongs. And I think this is a good spot for Fender Bender. Turning back could have a little bit more punch. I mean, he went by Go Crow last time out. We'll see if he can transfer that form over to the grass. So super consistent, and he can sit a little bit. So for me, I kind of would have 2, 3, 4, 5 as my main. And then, like you said, I'd love to play. Like, I'm going to probably play one ticket where I go something like this. In the start in race number 4, I might play a ticket where I go 3-7, I single the 13, then I come back with 3-7-8-11 with 5-9 with all. That's one approach for me. Could come back with another ticket where we go, 3-7 to start and then go a little deeper using, 1, 5, 10, 11, 13. And then on that ticket, you can shorten up a little bit on the back end and maybe use your, maybe like a 3, 4, 5 there. So different approaches for me and some of the horses that I think I'm going to be building my tickets around. In the 5th race, the number 13 Cowgirl Court. In the with you in the 7th race, also the number 5. I think the Morongo, one that we have to include on all of our tickets. To me, those are 2 must uses, and then maybe the bomb in the 6th race, the 7 Peyton Sky Dancer, as you mentioned. There's just no monsters in there. Maybe the long shot with some of that old turf form can call back on one of those races. But I like both of these sequences. Give us some of your overall thoughts on the Thursday sequence.
Yeah, and the only horse I'll add in the nightcap is a horse like Masterful Stride in the 6 hole. You get 12-1 morning line, Epic Drama, your second choice on the morning line, and they were only a length away. And I thought, when I watched the replay, Masterful Stride finished full run, actually ran very well, broke from the inside that day and was off incredibly slow. Julio Felix should be more comfortable on this 8-year-old by Posse. His second time out off of a brief layoff. I think there's upside in Masterful Stride at double-digit odds, but I'm going to play it similar to you. On one ticket, I'll likely single the 7 and 2B Royal on the first leg and try and go deep in race number 7. But on my other ticket, Marengo Tango in race number 7, going to be a single for me. And, depending on how the earlier day goes, that early pick 4, hopefully we have some money in our pocket because I want to be as deep as I can in that last race. I think that's a race to try and spread as much as you reasonably can. But my keys of the sequence are going to be 2B Royal and then Marengo Tango at 8-1.
Brian, really appreciate your time. We went through Wednesday. We went through Thursday. For those of the folks who are just listening into this Thursday part, give us all your plugs again. Where can we find you on social media? And let us know. So what, when the Canterbury race day starts, where are we going to find you, or where are we going to be able to hear from you throughout the day?
Yeah, so unfortunately, with no fans, I'm up in the press box quite a bit in our TV studio. I'll be on just a couple minutes to post, talking to the simulcast players. We don't have a lot of fans on track. Typically, I'm out in the paddock telling you about how I handicap the race and view the horses. But at this time, I'll be in the studio. And then you can follow me each and every day on Twitter. My Twitter handle is Mr. B_CBY analyst. And we're giving out some inside information with Canterbury Park and handicapping the races to try and make everyone money. Next week, we'll actually start our first 4-day week of racing, Monday through Thursday, 4:30 each and every day, and we're hammering that 10% low takeout pick 5 each and every day. It's going to be the last 5 thoroughbred races on the card. It's averaging over 100,000 in handle, and the payouts have been excellent as well. We had a $56,000 record payout so far in the Pick 5, and I expect that to continue.
Brian, this was a lot of fun. This was one of those guys that have seen, talked, maybe interacted with once or twice online, but never had the opportunity to sit down and have a conversation and talk races. This was a blast, and I think we might be in a little bit of trouble, or we're both going to be making some money, because it seemed like we saw the ball pretty similarly. This Wednesday and Thursday racing cards. Thank you so much. I hope this is the first time of many having you back on That's What She Said.
I appreciate it. And for those of you new to Canterbury, welcome, and hopefully we can all make some money.
Brian Arrigoni there. You heard the ways you can follow him. We're going to be watching him whenever we play those races over at Canterbury. Big thank you to Brian. Don't go anywhere, folks. So we're going to hear from one of our sponsors. We'll be right back on That's What G Said. That's going to do it for That's What G Said. A big thank you to our guest, Brian Arrigoni, pulling double duty. Chris joining us for the first time, talking some Churchill Downs for later this week. For those of you who are interested in what's gonna be on the menu for our weekend preview show, well, we'll continue to update you on everything going on in the world of MLB, NBA, and NFL as the major sports are on their way back. And then it'll be horse racing. Scott Shapiro is going to join us to talk about the big stakes races in the big card at Churchill Downs. So we'll talk Churchill Downs Saturday Stakes with Scott Shapiro. We're going to talk some Lone Star racing, and we're going to have a new guest that we welcome into you. So surprise guest we'll be welcoming in to talk some of the Lone Star Saturday card. And we'll also go through some of the other Saturday racing. We'll talk some Pleasanton over the next the weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And, we're going to have that old wrestling rewatch where we go through the 1998 Royal Rumble. That's going to be coming up on the next episode of That's What G Said. Right now, we close this one out with Joey Cleveland.